With a hand in his face, 18 points for the Indiana Pacer, second-year man, and he leads Team Jalen into the championship. They're getting some good-looking shots here. This is Halliburton, no good. Miles Turner left of the mark, 23 seconds to go. Shot in the air goes! Tyrese Halliburton holding the pose with 20.5 seconds to go. And the hometown team has done it again. Team Pacers are your champs.
It's good to have success here in Indy. The fans wanted to see us have a good showing, and we did. Now it's time for me to hold my end of the bargain three-point contest.
Second one, 22. Third one on its way, 24. Fourth one's good, 26. And his last ball, he missed it short and flat to the side. 26 for Halliburton, tying Trae Young. 17-14 East behind this man, Halliburton. A logo three. He's feeling it, and he knocks it home. An early show for Tyrese Halliburton. 5 for 5 from distance.
Yes, the sounds of the weekend. Welcome in on this Monday, Indianapolis. We're broadcasting live from the DriveHubler.com studios. It's the wake-up call. He's Kevin Bowen. Boy, he's going to be a tired Kevin Bowen today after last night's festivities. I'm Andy Sweeney. Great job there from Mark Dighton. We got you for the next 3 hours. A busy, busy weekend in Indianapolis is in the books. I'm sure everyone will have their all-star game hot takes out there on this Monday, and we'll talk about that. Little college basketball as Indiana and Purdue. Not good for them, not good for Butler, and we'll talk about it over the next 3 hours. KB, a good morning to you, sir.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad that we have the All-Star highlights because certainly no college basketball from the weekend. Don't forget about JMV Sycamores as well. He was doom and gloom, and I went on with him yesterday for an All-Star game preview.
But you know about them, at least now they can't blame the committee. Now they know that they're going to have to win the conference
They've taken it out of the committee's hands, is what you're saying?
Usually we like it the other way. When they win so many games, they've taken it out of the committee's hands. But now they know they have to go all the way in the Valley. But anyway, go ahead.
Purdue favored, lose. Indiana, I was shocked to see they were actually favored. They lose. Indiana State favored. They lose. Not good college basketball whatsoever from the weekend, and obviously a whole lot on the All-Star game front. Just generally, I would say this. First couple things popped in my head. The All-Star game is just a horrible product of basketball. There was a lot of talk and hype. What will the game be like? It really has come down to just how far can you shoot and who hits the most threes during the game. Like that decides the game. And I loved the boos for Damian Lillard. I really hope that we get more of this Bucks-Pacers rivalry. Honestly, Andy, they should have stopped the game after Halliburton hit his fifth three and handed him the MVP then.
Well, I mean, Halliburton played 27 minutes. The only one on the East to play more was Damian Lillard. This is Doc Rivers. The only good thing Doc Rivers has done for Damian Lillard or the Milwaukee Bucks in 2 weeks. That's it right there. I love it. Yeah, you boo him. That's boo Lillard right off the stage.
7-5
fantastic.
Was the MVP vote for Lillard. I honestly thought like co-MVP, and Lillard gunned, and he clearly, I mean, his post-game comments said it, he clearly was going for this award, but I don't know if I can get all up in arms about it because the game is so bad.
I don't care that the game's bad. Like I was driving in listening to ESPN radio, but
it takes like all the big dudes out of the game.
I know.
Jokic shouldn't even be on the floor. Really,
they were. By the way, Jokic and Luka, can Luka jump over a phone book? My man was moving in slow motion, if you will.
Stuffed by the rim on one of those dunk attempts.
Listen. The NFL took this out of our control. The NFL's like, all right. Everyone's going to keep complaining about our game. We're just going to make it a flag football game and then, have Gardner Minshew, a third or fourth rate quarterback in the NFL, throw it some cones. We're just kind of, I don't know if we're giving in, but we're kind of giving in. I understand it's not at the end of the season why the NBA cannot do that. But here's the thing. I have never in my radio career had and I know nationally this will be a story. Okay. I've already heard it on ESPN radio. The complaining about the game, I don't have it in me, KB. I knew what we were going to get. I knew we were going to get no defense, logo threes, walk-in layups, walk-in dunks. and you can't do anything about it. Baseball tried. Baseball said, we're going to make this home field advantage in the World Series, which is about the dumbest rule that's ever been created in sports. So, I don't know. I mean, do you really care?
Well, see,
they scored 200 points?
That's the domino effect for me. If I don't care about the game, how can I care about the MVP award?
Well, I don't care about the MVP award. Yeah, but Indiana fans will care.
You know what I'm saying, though?
Like,
it's just
award.
like, okay,
I'm with you.
Lillard versus Halliburton shooting from the volleyball line. That's pretty much what it came down to.
It was a great weekend for Halliburton and the
awesome
Pacers.
Weekend.
Turner,
loved it.
Mathurin.
Like, the whole atmosphere, I just found myself driving in this morning being like, and again, I am heavily biased, Andy, but it's just like, I'm proud of our city being able to put on the type of event that I felt like was put on. I mean, from an efficiency standpoint, from a passion standpoint, from a uniqueness standpoint, to me, when you're putting on these sorts of events and they're annual events, that's how you separate yourself from other, cities. And whether it is, again, passion, the efficiency, or the uniqueness, I feel like we routinely check all of those boxes. And like, I am heavily biased. I am the exact wrong person to sit here and give some, unfiltered take on, because I clearly I want these events to be in our city more than they have been. But the times that I was downtown all weekend long, I felt like we did an outstanding job with that. It's unfortunate that Mother Nature reared her ugly head for really like the first time in months with the weather there, but didn't think it was too much of a hindrance there. And now if you're Tyrese Halliburton, you do absolutely nothing today. You treat this day like it is literally Sunday after a bachelor party, and you don't show your face. You don't get out of bed.
He has an IV brought to him, brought to his room, wherever he's at. Okay.
You don't need to do it. I mean, I'm watching him last night. I'm sitting there at Cambridge Fieldhouse, and I'm like, he's wearing the back pad when he comes over.
He's like you.
In between breaks,
are you wearing the back pad simply in solidarity with Tyrese Halliburton? What's going on with you?
Him and I are doing the Spider-Man meme.
How is the back, by the way? Everything okay?
It is getting better,
All
but
right.
like Halliburton.
I'm sure the 20-degree weather really helped over the weekend.
I'm still doing that. So, yes, it is rest. We'll have Rick Carlisle on tomorrow. The Pacers will get back to practice tomorrow. Thursday, their first game, and then we reset and we move forward to the final 26
You
games
put him in
of the
one of
season.
those stand-up things where they turn the temperature all the way down to like 100 below. Have you seen those? I've never actually been in one of those. And then they have the thing that looks like a sleeping bag, those chambers.
Yeah,
That's
I'm not.
what he needs to be in for the next 24 hours.
I am absolutely not tough enough to last there.
I will say, and I think Mark Dighton, he was down there nearly the same time. So the Fan Fest, the crossover, we either did the best job of promoting that, KB, or they didn't need our promotion, because I think everyone in Indianapolis was at the NBA crossover on Saturday afternoon. Like, I mean, everyone in the city in Indianapolis.
That thing was fun. I mean, it was a pain in the ass getting out of there, but it was a fun as hell time. I don't know if either of you went, but it was really cool. My daughters had a blast. There was
Good job.
Players left and right. There was a G League slam dunk contest going on. It was really cool.
I ran into, and I'm not exactly sure which rendition he's going by, but I nearly ran into Ron Artest.
Oh, yeah.
And that I would be one of the last people you would ever want to see, because that is a scary, menacing individual who still looks like, he could go out and give you 12-8 tonight.
I thought one of the coolest moments of All-Star Weekend for me was last night inside of Cambridge Fieldhouse. I think it was after the first quarter. The Pacers honored some of their former All-Stars. I don't know, 9, 10 of them, put them on the Jumbotron, and it was such a long time out. You actually had a good amount of the NBA current All-Stars looking at the Jumbotron and watching. I'm looking down there, Tyrese Halliburton's clapping after each one is introduced. One of the loudest cheers for any of them was Artest, easily. I mean, certainly Reggie had Reggie, and that goes without saying. Jermaine O'Neal, very deserved recognition. But I thought pretty cool. Ron rocking his Pacers hat there. Basketball indoor theme park. That's what I called it Friday during the show. I thought the crossover was great. Yeah, it was packed. Tons of great activation stuff over there. Saturday night inside of Lucas Oil, guys, I feel like the one thing that needs to become annual for the All-Star game is, and Caitlin Clark's presence will only help this, I think probably the best moment of the weekend, or at least one of them, was Steph versus Sabrina Ionescu.
Yeah.
I mean, when she hit those first 6 or 7 threes to open up Saturday night, that might have been the loudest cheer of the night inside of that building. And you had the Pacers win a team event in that arena. I thought that was really cool. Like, dunk contest. Nowadays, we have seen, I think, so many of the dunks it just rewards the little guy. And Mac McClung has...
It happened with Nate Robinson. Remember, he missed like 33 dunks in a row?
Yeah, it's just like you watch Jaylen Brown dunk, or you watch, Jaime, or even, Toppin's brother.
I thought Toppin was pretty good, actually.
Right,
yeah.
but it's like you just walk away and you aren't as blown away as you used to be because these guys are just so athletic and they make it look so easy. Mac McClung, it's like, wow, he is really springy. He's dunking over Shaq. He did kind of the double clutch with the ball, one of his early dunks.
That was the best dunk of the night, I thought.
The one where he dropped the ball and caught it again.
Caught it again and dunked it.
I thought that was. I agree with you. I did think, as an aside, that was pretty clean. The LID there, the floor. How did that
LED
look?
floor? Yeah. I thought it was cool. I enjoyed like the variety of different floors that you saw. Again, for me, inside of Lucas Oil, this goes back to the announcement last summer, and this goes back to what I said a few minutes ago. How do you separate yourself from these other all-star cities? And what did our host committee decide? Hey, instead of having every single event inside of our NBA arena, what if we go across the street and keep it in the downtown radius, but double the amount of people you're going to get in the building? And sure, it is, at the end of the day, it's still a basketball court in a football stadium. Like, the intimacy of that is not going to be great, but at the end of the day, if you get 35,000 people in there and you open it up to an extra, 16, 17,000 people, that to me is all that matters. And that was kind of what I felt inside of Lucas Oil Stadium on Saturday night there. So good Monday morning. I don't know if we've even said that. Good Monday morning to our audience out
President's
there.
Day. Happy President's Day
Happy
to everybody.
President's Day, certainly.
Kids have off, right, Mark? Your kids are off school?
Oh, yeah. They were up late last night.
Yeah, I'm going to
No
be...
school. You can stay up.
Maddie's like, oh, gosh, can you please leave the show right as it ends to come home and help out? So... yes, good luck to everyone out there dealing with that here on this Monday morning. Tony East, saw him last night in the building, 8:30 today. Gregg Doyel, also in the building last night, coming up at 9 o'clock.
Doyel called Lillard a pig. I love that.
Lillard was
Did
gunning.
you see that?
I did think, honestly, the most memorable part of last night, I think if anyone even goes down this path, it'll be like, what do you remember from the NBA All-Star Game in Indianapolis in 2024? I think the Halliburton flurry to start the game will be the most memorable moment. But Lillard literally just stepping into half-court shots and hitting both of them that he took. I thought Halliburton deserved MVP unquestionably, but then when Lillard hit the second half-court shot, and it literally looked like he was just stepping into a free throw.
Yeah.
I'm like, gosh, he is really talented.
Yeah, and he's also going, at that point, you're like, yeah, he's probably going to win the MVP. I don't know. I mean, Halliburton didn't win the MVP, but you got to boo Lillard. I don't know. There is a trade-off there that wasn't so bad. But, I mean, honestly,
is this a rivalry? Like, is that Dame time? Was Damian Lillard not passing the ball to Tyrese Halliburton because he did his celebration in Vegas?
Doc Rivers, the Bucks coach, playing him the most minutes on the Eastern side. I believe in all of that. I've already made it known, like, I'm not hot-takey about the style of the game. I did think, like you maybe until the end, that Halliburton was going to win MVP. But I will say this, for people that are mad and want to boo him and call him a pig, listen, I have no problem with any of that. We can get our jokes off this morning. For me, real talk, I just thought it was a good weekend for the Pacers. Like, I want to talk about this at 7:30, but, I was wrong about Mathurin. Like, I was like, hey, you need to go and bubble wrap for 3 or 4 days. And he had a very nice weekend. And for me, it was a celebration, maybe not a celebration. It was at least an acknowledgement from the NBA that there is a good young team with a good young marketable star here in Halliburton. And it was just a good weekend. I mean, from Friday night to Saturday night and into what Halliburton did, the flurry at the beginning. Yeah, again, he should have won MVP, but it was an acknowledgement from the NBA that the Pacers got a little bit of something cooking. And now for me, the days of acknowledgement and praise and, it's a young team and they're up and coming, and Halliburton and Mathurin having a big weekend and everything else. Now it's, let's go win some games. They have been, and that's kind of my thing this morning. We'll talk about it all week, is you've had You've had the up and down play. You've had the injuries. Good God, this team has had some injuries and some inconsistent play. Now it's time to be healthy, and now it's time to be consistent, and now it's time to be good. And I thought it was a good recharge and a good celebration for the Pacers, and now they get a couple days off, and now they got to get going.
Thursday, Pistons in town. For those that did watch the Rising Stars game Friday night, boy, circle Benedict Mathurin against Jay Nivey. The first time those two are matching up against each other. Mathurin's just he's simply crazy. I mean, like I'm watching the Rising Stars game on Friday night. I'm like, we're about ready to have a fight here. Like Mathurin and Ivy are about ready to fight each other. And I guess fortunately it did not get to that. That is the most competitive aspect to the night. I guess I don't want people to walk away, Andy, and think, I can sit here and say the All-Star game from any sort of semblance of competitive basketball is an absolute joke.
Oh, sure it is.
But that doesn't mean I don't think the weekend itself doesn't offer a really nice celebration for those stars. Like I'm sitting there watching intros last night. I'm like, damn, this is really cool. Like in our city, you're getting all of this, Big O and Reggie and Larry and all of that. And then, they're showing celebrities at every single time out. I mean, it is a who's who in that building. That is pretty darn awesome for our city to be able to bask in that. I thought the building itself looked great last night. It was fun walking around and just seeing all of the atmosphere all weekend long, and certainly made up for an ugly, ugly weekend college basketball-wise here locally. So plenty to get to on that front. Again, the Colts offseason about to really pick up here, potentially as early as tomorrow. We'll explain that. Michael Pittman has had some comments about business is business. What do we read into that, if anything, as the franchise tag window opens up tomorrow? We'll hit on that as well. Again, Tony East joining us at 8:30. Gregg Doyel coming up at 9. Thank you for spending this Monday morning with us. It is the wake-up call here. Kevin Bowen, Andy Sweeney, and Mark Dykton on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
It was not the season we expected.
Caught. No, it's dropped.
There were highs.
It's a touchdown.
Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
All right, morning checkdown time. Reminder, Tony East going to join us coming up at 8:30. Gregg Doyel will join us coming up at 9 o'clock. We'll get to the NBA All-Star festivities here in just a second. But an ugly weekend, quite frankly, of college basketball. Purdue losers yesterday. And I got to say, it's really one of the first times I was disappointed in Purdue the majority of this game.
So you bet on them at halftime.
69. I mean, come on, you get them at -1.5. I just thought they were just kind of weak. I don't know. I just think they weren't strong with the ball. They didn't go after loose balls. They weren't the first one to the floor. Like those types of plays you usually see from them. I don't know. I know he had foul trouble, but I didn't like how they played. They didn't make any threes. The bench didn't do a damn thing. So anyway, 73-69 postgame. Matt Painter on the loss.
They did some really good things. I think the stat that probably jumps out to me is their points off of turnovers. Like that's the game right there. If we take care of the basketball and those turnovers and we just miss shots, we probably win the game. We don't score the ball in any of those possessions, but now they're not running out and getting layups and we're getting behind plays and fouling them and stuff. But yeah, just, we didn't play well enough, to get the win.
I mean, I would say it probably doesn't matter too much, but I would say people now have viewed Purdue as the overall number 1 seed, even though UConn has been the number 1 team. I think that flips. I think UConn not only will be the number 1 team, I think they will be viewed after that loss probably as the overall number 1 seed. Rutgers up next. That's coming up on Thursday. Give me a swoosh. IU basketball. Listen, it is what it is at this point. 76-72. That's your final. Mike Woodson not happy post game.
It's simple. You watched the same game I did. You got to make shots. We had some good looks, and we just didn't knock them down. I mean, there's nothing scientific about it. We moved the ball well enough to get open shots. You got to step up and make them. It's that simple.
Yeah, same thing for Indiana. 12 of 21, 57% from the line, KB. 6 of 18, 33% from 3. A couple late ones by McKenzie and Baco. Otherwise, they would have ended the game with 4 or 5 3-pointers. Again, they don't make threes. They don't make free throws. They can't shoot. They lose, and they lose to Northwestern.
Yeah, you can ask for more in terms of Boo Buie getting that second foul midway through the first half. Didn't take advantage of it, and that was the end of that. Somewhat of a run, I guess, in the second half, but nothing towards the competitive nature to where you actually thought, to steal a phrase from Mike Woodson, that they would get over the hump. And 0-4 now in his coaching career against Northwestern. Kind of crazy to say Northwestern has won 3 straight games in Bloomington, but that's the reality of where we're at right now with Indiana. Again, Butler, Indiana State, both of them losing games that certainly hurt their bubble chances. It's crazy if you want to nerd out over the net, Andy, that Indiana State is still just 32nd in the net. I would have assumed these back-to-back losses would have had them totally bottoming out, but still probably unlikely from an at-large bid standpoint. And Butler at Villanova coming up tomorrow. It was one of their worst halves of the year. Saturday, they actually were leading Creighton at halftime and got just beat down in the second half at Hinkle. So at Nova this week, at Seton Hall, those are a couple of important games. You can get a split there. You still feel very good about your bubble chances, but Butler right now, they're going to show up in a lot of Dayton play-in games when you see the new brackets come out this week.
Yeah, but KB, teams always talk about, having chances and everything like that. I mean, this Butler team had their chance, right? These last 3 games, we talked about it when you had Marquette, Creighton, and Providence. We said you had a chance to cement yourself and to leave those 3 games feeling pretty good. And you had the lead by 1 at half on Saturday, and you got absolutely beat down in the second half. I mean, not that they aren't an NCAA tournament team or they can't, but it was about kind of grabbing on to some of these opportunities. Like, that's what the Pacers did this weekend. They grabbed onto these opportunities. Butler had a couple home opportunities here this season recently, and they didn't take advantage of any of them.
Yeah, still 3-3 in this 6-game stretch filled with quad 1 opportunities, so not the end of the world by any means, but again, opportunities this week away from home. All right, last night in the All-Star game, the East 211 to 186. I guess that overhit quite a lot. What do we say, 362?
Yeah, 360.
Oh, my gosh. First 200-point game in All-Star history. If you didn't watch it, there's no need if you're expecting any sort of semblance of defense. By a vote of 7-5, Damian Lillard is your MVP last night. I believe he took 11 more shots than Tyrese Halliburton. Halliburton was incredible really early on. The fifth three, I believe, came from the logo. I thought we were going to get an Arthur skip after that fifth three. The sixth one, boy, if that would have gone in, you had the roof explode over there at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. But for the game, Halliburton, 27 minutes, 11 of 15 from the floor. He actually had a dunk. His only three-point attempt, or his only non-three-point attempt, was a dunk there late. 32 points for him. And now, Tyrese Halliburton, you rest. You don't show your face today. You sleep, and you sleep, and you sleep even more. I wrote an article. It's up on our website. And this goes back to Thursday night, Andy. He's just the perfect ambassador for what the Pacers need right now. And that is, to me, so vital for this franchise. On and off the floor, every time there was a mic in front of him, which was seemingly at every turn this weekend, I thought he handled it tremendously. And JMV brought up a good point to me yesterday. I went on with John. He was at the Winner's Circle. You think that this original All-Star game was supposed to be in 2021, and then COVID pushed it back 3 years. Boy, the Pacers franchise in quite a different spot. Yeah. Thanks to Tyrese Halliburton in those 3 years. Just the perfect ambassador. He called himself, it kind of feels like I'm the prom king this weekend. He handled that pretty darn well.
I mean, he was pulled in so many different directions, whether he was at the Woj podcast at the Vogue with you guys, or he was at the crossover event on Saturday doing appearances. He was getting pulled every which way. He did multiple contests on Saturday night. And he might be exhausted, but he looked like he was loving every minute of it.
I made a bunch of money this weekend, too. Shout out. And probably, so did Matherin, too. He was doing a lot of stuff. How close did you ever come to being prom king? Is that something that Kevin Bowen ever made a run at or not?
Boy, I would say it was about as close as Luka Doncic dunking last night.
My man can't jump. I love Luka, but he can't jump over a phone book. He really can't. And him and Jokic were on a fast break, and I'm like, they're moving so slow compared to everyone else on the floor. Did you happen to also see Tatum and Larry Bird meeting?
Yeah, that was the first time Jason Tatum's ever met Larry Bird?
How is that the first time that Jason Tatum, a bona fide star, has ever met Larry Bird? Did that surprise you?
Larry just doesn't leave Florida, does he?
I guess you're right. Would you?
No, probably not. So, again, last night inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, it was Damian Lillard taking home the MVP. I love the booing from the Pacers faithful, as Lillard was clearly gunning for that. Again, a Saturday night recap. You had the Pacers win the skills competition. That was Matherin, Halliburton's half-court shot, and Miles Turner. 3-point also went to Damian Lillard, the dunk contest for a second straight year, Mac McClung. And I thought really the highlight of the night, Steph Curry, Sabrina Ionescu in that head-to-head 3-point shootout. That was a great show by those two. Steph able to win that one.
You think they're going to do that again, like a Steph Curry versus like Caitlin Clark or something next year? Or something
Sabrina
like that?
brought up, I didn't realize this, she's from the Bay Area. Next year, the All-Star Game in San Francisco, so you have that sort of connection there. You would think the NBA would want to involve Caitlin Clark whenever she does declare for the draft. And then someone brought up, I didn't realize this, Lillard 3-point contest, he'd be going for a three-peat. Mac McClung will be going for a three-peat. So do you have any challenger? Obviously, the 3-point contest, I think, has taken over as kind of the star event of Saturday night. But dunk contest-wise, I don't know what you do there. Credit to Jaylen Brown for participating in it, but
it's our own fault. We've seen these guys do. It used to be like if you cradled the ball between your legs and did a reverse dunk, you'd be like, well, that's a great dunk. And now I feel like Jacob Toppin can easily do that dunk.
And again, it just rewards the shorter dudes. It's like we just need to have a bunch of dudes under 6'5" to truly get out of our seats for the dunk contest.
How many times can you pull Shaq out of the crowd, too?
I know. I was like, gosh, first time Jaquez and now Mac McClung a little bit later. All right, Tony East going to join us at 8:30. He was a busy man following around the Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton this weekend. Gregg Doyel coming up at 9. Certainly a heavy, heavy amount of basketball talk here on this Monday morning, but tomorrow could be the start of some offseason news for the Colts. Their biggest item, about to get an answer on that. Michael Pittman Jr. has had some words on it. We'll share those coming up next.
Hey, it's JMV later on this afternoon at 3.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Tony East will join us coming up at about 8:30. Gregg Doyel at 9. We'll get to our GOATs of the weekend as well. Tons to get to today. Still beaming from the All-Star festivities this weekend. And here in a couple minutes, we'll dive into Michael Pittman's words on franchise tag. We'll really start that coming up tomorrow. KB, just quickly for me, I thought one of the big takeaways for me and where your boy here was wrong the most this weekend was, leading into the break last Tuesday, this is 6 days ago, we had Rick Carlisle on, and Rick Carlisle flat out told us, I'm worried about the health of Benedict Mathurin. And so I'm like, okay, this is a Tuesday. And then they had a game right after that on that Thursday, was it? Was that Golden State? I'm trying to think if I have my days mixed up. No, it was after the Charlotte game. This is when
Toronto Wednesday night.
It was after that, and it's kind of one of those things that he misses that game on Wednesday, and we saw him play kind of a nothing game on Monday against Charlotte, and we kind of built 3-4 games where he didn't play well. Then he had missed some games. There had been the illness going around the team. There had been the knee injury. And I really thought going into this weekend, I was like, okay, does Mathurin, what does he need to do? Because you're right. In that game on Friday, he was ready to go. He and Jaden Ivey were ready to go. And by the way, that's not surprising knowing Benedict Mathurin. It ended up being a good weekend for him. And I think, now with having today off and getting back to practice Tuesday and not having to play, not having to travel, but playing on Thursday against Detroit, for me now, I'm not expecting there to be any hindrances on Benedict Mathurin unless there is something that pops up at practice. He looked good. He looked healthy this weekend. I was surprised how healthy he looked and how spry maybe he looked. So much like my take has been, it has been an acknowledgement and a celebration of this young Pacer team. Now it's time to be healthy, and now it's time to be consistent. And we saw Halliburton play a lot of minutes last night, very much this weekend, the forefront of everything. But where I was wrong the most was Benedict Mathurin. I mean, he had a fantastic weekend by all counts, and now I expect him to go out there Thursday and be ready to go, don't you? I mean, I expect to see old Benedict Mathurin.
Yeah, I thought he was about to start our first fight in Rising Stars game history. I have no idea if there has been a prior fight in the Rising Stars game, but I'm assuming there hasn't. Yeah, Mathurin is not a, let's go at cruise control here in those environments. He was, Miles Turner, I thought, had the great quote on Friday night, very on brand that Benedict Mathurin would win the MVP of the Rising Stars game. He was taking no prisoners out there. I saw that he was mad at Tamika Catchings for Catchings drafting Jaden Ivey. Her lifelong friend, Niele Ivey's son, is who she decided to draft, and Mathurin took that personal.
Did he really?
Don't you love that about Mathurin?
Listen, I love it. I'm ready. This team needs that type of personality. They need him coming up.
Oh,
it's been the last couple weeks. He just hasn't
love
been
his
right.
edge. Yeah, I absolutely love the edge that he brings. Buddy of mine texted me Friday night, and this is as Mathurin. It was pretty clear he was going to win MVP of that Rising Stars. Should the winner of the MVP of the Rising Stars game get a spot in the All-Star game?
I'm fine with it. I'm fine with anything. Anything the NBA wants to do. What was it, Mark? Dustin DePirac was talking about doing an NBA jam thing where different parts of the basketball court, or maybe you throw a ball and put some fire on it.
Different point values.
This thing up a little
Isn't
bit.
that kind of the skills competition on Saturday night?
Oh, which, by the way, the skills competition was an embarrassment. A couple of those guys embarrassed themselves.
Was it Anthony Edwards going left-handed?
Anthony Edwards, Paolo Banchero embarrassed himself, not knowing which way to go. I mean, those guys put 3 minutes of thought into it before you go out there. I mean, they were bad, man. They embarrassed themselves. Come on.
Part of me thinks going back to the Elam ending would be better for the All-Star game as well. I seem to recall the few years that was in there, you at least had a somewhat, emphasis on somewhat, competitive end of the game of these guys having to get to a point total. For those that watched the Rising Stars game on Friday night, they did, an Elam ending. It was, get to a certain point total there. And Mathurin's at the foul line. And again, Mathurin's crazy, but he's sitting there telling Paolo Banchero $25,000. I guarantee I'd make these 2 free throws. And of course, he bricks both of them. But still, that stuff you love, and it just adds a competitive juice.
I love the
Whereas
Elam
last
ending,
night you're watching and Brian Anderson is just begging you to say, hey, man, the West is going to try to make one more run at this.
Yeah,
and it's
one
like,
more
no,
run in
I
them.
mean,
No, they don't.
first off, no. Secondly, like, who cares? If you're going to a target score, at least there's a little bit of anticipation on that end of it. Again, for those that missed Saturday night skills competition, the Pacers do win it. Halliburton, Turner, and Matherin as a three-man team. Them going last, I did think was beneficial because at the on the passing apparatus, like when they had to pass into those three different hoops, I did see that the Pacers realized that, hey, if we run up to the big, basket of balls and you grab two of them and bring two of them back to your spot to throw, that is more efficient than just doing the one at a time there. So credit to the Pacers and their basketball intelligence.
Yeah, they thought about it
on that end as well.
No, it was a lot of fun. It was a fantastic weekend. The game is what it is. I'm with you on the Elam ending stuff.
It just gives you a little bit more. I'm not saying it's saving it, but you cannot tell me watching the fourth quarter last night, or I guess it's now been 2 years we haven't done the Elam ending, if I'm not mistaken. When they have done that, it's been more exciting. Like, I don't need to see 211 this morning. Like, that number just doesn't register to me at all. Watching a little bit more of a competitive back and forth to where maybe on those isolations you get, a hand up or something like that. I don't know. I'm probably grasping at straws here.
Last thing on this, because I know you have an item we want to get into with Michael Pittman. Did you happen to see, and I love him, God bless him, did you happen to see Bob Ryan's 2 tweets last night? Old man Bob Ryan he's in there in Boston. I don't know if he used to work or if he still does, I believe, for the Boston Globe. Did you happen to see his tweets last night?
No.
People always have fun with him because he's the get off my lawn guy, and he knows it. He doesn't care. He does the get off my lawn, and then everyone has fun with it. He tweeted out 2 things. He goes, if you're not personally offended, but this disgraceful farce taking place right now in Indy, you don't love or understand basketball. These all-stars, in quotations, should be censured. That's a great word. And where are the coaches? Have any of them any pride? They're all acting like athletic court jesters. Once again, these NBA stars are showing no respect for the game. It's another dunkarama and three-point farce. Not a single hand in anyone's face. I'll see how TCM is doing. See you next year. What a waste of time. Adam, you must do something. It's embarrassing for your sport.
Silver did seem a little frustrated handing out the trophy. He did seem a little bit like, he did.
Okay,
You could tell he wasn't like overly thrilled with it. Remember, he said something to that effect with us. Like, I'm looking forward to Sunday night. Hopefully it is a little bit more of a competitive game.
Good luck.
In this day and age of load management, and this is how your bodies are, and I mean, LeBron only played a half. Like, this is, welcome to reality. Again, a little bit more from the Elam Indy. I don't have great answers, honestly, on that, because, we're the ones right here clamoring. I'm thinking to myself, Halliburton's got a back pad. I'm like, why is he playing as much as he is? I'm sitting there watching and thinking, he shouldn't go back out there.
Yeah, but you want him to win MVP as well. It's a very double-edged sword.
Yeah, again, I can't get too worked up over the MVP when I'm watching that product.
Michael Pittman Jr., go ahead. You had a little tidbit on him.
Yeah, tomorrow starts the window, 2-week window, starting tomorrow for the franchise tag. I know we've talked about this a good amount here throughout the Colts offseason, and, we've had very little on the Colts news item front here throughout the first month plus of the offseason. But beginning tomorrow, February 20th through March 5th, teams around the league have 2 weeks to decide if they will use the franchise tag in 2024 or not. Using that on Michael Pittman Jr. would guarantee him on a 1-year deal for just over $20 million for this season. It would also allow you a much, much longer period of time to try and get a long-term deal done. If you do not tag him in this 2-week window, Andy, March 13th is the start of free agency. So that means you will have from now until March 13th to get a long-term deal done with him if you choose not to use the tag. If you tag him, I believe that window extends all the way up just before training camp. Like mid-July is usually when it freezes and you can no longer negotiate a long-term deal, or you can't agree to a long-term deal during the offseason. So I feel like there's a little bit of education that I need to remind myself, because the Colts haven't used the tag in over a decade, and maybe even for our audience out there, on what the franchise tag means. Again, I think that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. But again, in the next 2 weeks, we are about to get the first major answer to the Colts offseason. I don't think it's the end of the world if you use it. I don't think it's the end of the world if you don't use it. But if you don't use it, that obviously shrinks your time period. You have now until March 13th to get a deal done. If not, Michael Pittman Jr. hits the open market and becomes a free agent on that Wednesday in March.
What changes, other than, I guess, the back and forth with the team, if you're the Colts and how you view Michael Pittman Jr., what changes from March until later into the summer, right before training camp? And I understand teams do this all the time, but what changes on the way they view Michael Pittman Jr. from March until July or August, honestly?
If they draft a guy at 15, maybe that alters some of your thinking a little bit. I outside of that, though, I think it's a fair question to bring up because not much is probably the answer. Again, you have time, and certainly the Colts have had now a month into the offseason to, sit there and decide exactly where Pittman's at. Maybe you get to free agency and you see deals all of a sudden be handed out for Mike Evans or Calvin Ridley or T. Higgins. And maybe that impacts like a little bit of the market value for Pittman Jr. But to your answer, not a whole lot changes. Again, I think he will be a Colt. I think he will still be a Colt. How it looks, though, I don't know exactly. And I think something that you run into with the franchise tag is if you do tag him and you don't get the long-term deal done right away, does he participate in the spring offseason program?
Well, I think that's the thing to me is...
And does that matter with Anthony Richardson coming back?
I think to me...
I would tend to think that it does matter here more than it matters in some other places.
Probably. I think, and this might be the wrong word, but the contentious nature of it...
Right.
Does it, like with Jonathan Taylor, it was contentious. Do not get it wrong, okay? You had the agent in the middle, you had the owner in the middle, you had the GM, you had the player who was acting out in ways that he had not acted out here, being a very, model citizen to going to being a sulking player that was away from the team. But KB, when he got his money and they got the deal, it was like the pressure cooker that was that situation. Didn't it let up? And then everyone just immediately went to, wow, it's great that we have Jonathan Taylor. That's going to help our young quarterback. It's going to help the offense. It's going to be all good to go. And it almost seemed like bygones are bygones. So I don't know how much the contentious nature of, could it get contentious with Michael Pittman Jr.? Does that matter to fans? And I think what you're saying is probably spot on that, with Anthony Richardson just having so valuable little time playing in this league, him getting any extra rep with a guy like Michael Pittman absolutely matters. The other thing I would say about this is how I feel. That we've talked about, it's a little, but over 21 mil, I think it was, if you use the tag. I mean, don't you feel like the number that you're starting out at is roughly 23 mil per year
probably.
if you bring him back on a long-term deal? Isn't the deal the deal? Michael Pittman, his value is very much out there. It's about 23 to 25 mil. And if you're the Colts, that's about roughly what it is as well. I can't believe these two would be just so far apart in their negotiations.
Again,
does that make sense?
Part of me would say the only reason I could see the tag and then give the 5-month window, extend the 5-month window to get the long-term deal done is if you think there's something bigger, different, unique to what else you're going to do this offseason. Like if you're going to go out there and make a big move, or you really want to wait till the draft, do you want to just give yourself a little bit more wiggle room? Like not commit. You feel like you're going to commit to them, but you don't know exactly what the rest of the offseason is going to look like. So why don't you get through, the end of April in the draft, and then you have a clearer picture of, man, all of a sudden this trade that we didn't think necessarily might be there in early March, it's now there in early May, and boom, we've made the deal. Now that all of a sudden impacts how we handle Pittman. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that would be the only thing.
But again, that's a little far-fetched for even me. I'm trying to think of hypotheticals here.
Right.
I don't believe that personally. But again, that's just my thought. Now, we did see, and this is the, time, I guess, the life we live in, especially with professional athletes, the Michael Pittman Jr. latest social media post late last night.
Yes, well after the All-Star game.
An Instagram post with the caption, very short and sweet caption, by the way, "Business is business."
Okay, so is that telling you what the first round of, maybe not the first round, but the latest round of conversations on where these two are? Again, I just can't believe.
Do you read anything into business is business?
No. Okay, so this is just like a big-time free agent who is battling the franchise tag, who wants the long-term deal, who doesn't want to play, if he had his druthers, if you will, doesn't want to play under the franchise tag. That individual always puts out that type of meme, that type of post, either to Twitter or Instagram. It is as predictable as there being no defense played in the NBA All-Star game, is it not?
That's probably accurate.
I mean, don't you feel that way? That at some point you're going to get this from Michael Pittman?
And I think another thing to watch here in the next few weeks, again, 3 weeks from Wednesday is the start of free agency. Pittman will dominate the headlines, Andy, because he's the most likely to get tagged, probably the only realistic likely guy to get tagged for the Colts. Do we see re-signings for any of the others? And the three that would be, I think, highest on that list would be Kenny Moore, would be Grover Stewart, would be Julian Blackmon. In a normal free agent year, any of those three would easily top the list for Colts and in-house free agents. Do we see re-signings for any of those as well? All right, on the other side, again, with a lot of basketball talk coming up with Tony East and Gregg Doyel, we certainly need to hit, unfortunately, on the ugly college basketball weekend in this state. Concern for Purdue at all in what we saw in Indiana? Same old, I guess, as the season. Honestly, it's probably reached a point where it can't end soon enough. Transfer portal time in Bloomington is certainly the topic of choice. We'll do that coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. It is the wake-up call here, recapping All-Star Weekend in Indy. Kevin Bowen, Andy Sweeney, and Mark Dykton.
Query and Company. Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Holmgren will pass it up to Matherin. Matherin down to the baseline. Tough jumper. Good, and it's over. Benedict Matherin with a hand in his face. 18 points for the Indiana Pacer, second-year man, and he leads Team Jalen into the championship. They're getting some good-looking shots here. This is Halliburton, no good. Miles Turner left of the mark. 23 seconds to go. Shot in the air goes. Tyrese Halliburton holding the pose with 20.5 seconds to go. And the hometown team has done it again. Team Pacers are your champs.
It's good to have success here in Indy. The fans wanted to see us, have a good showing, and we did. Now it's time for me to hold my end of the bargain three-point contest.
Second one, 22. Third one on its way, 24. Fourth one's good, 26. And his last ball, he missed it. Short and flat to the side. 26 for Halliburton, tying Trae Young. 17-14 East behind this man, Halliburton. A logo three. He's feeling it, and he knocks it home. An early show for Tyrese Halliburton. 5 for 5 from distance.
All right, a fun weekend here in Indy. Hour number 2, KB and Andy. It's the Wake Up Call, broadcasting live from the drivehubler.com studios. All the snow on Friday. I tell you, I was stuck in some of that traffic coming downtown for an event, but it cleared out on Saturday and Sunday. And like I have said all morning, a great showing for the Pacer crew. There's no doubt about it. Halliburton probably should have won the MVP last night in the All-Star game. I loved if you bought the tickets, especially, you got a little chance to boo Damian Lillard, which is fantastic. Anytime we can boo Dame Lillard, we appreciate it, right?
Is that a rivalry?
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah.
Would you rather see the Bucks or the Knicks in the playoffs from a rivalry standpoint?
The Bucks. The Bucks.
Giannis doesn't worry you?
No, he worries me, but Giannis can't shoot threes.
Well, we saw that last night. He actually said that post-game.
Giannis cannot shoot threes, so, for me,
he can do some other stuff pretty well.
He's going to get his. I do wonder what Bucks fans think of Lillard hitting all those shots. He's shooting 30-some% for the Bucks this season. He hasn't been good, but NBA All-Star Weekend, I know you were there. You have some pieces up at 1075thefan.com. Overall, looked like a good weekend, looked like a fun weekend, and a bunch of points scored last night. You got to watch everyone dunk and shoot, 45-foot threes.
Should we have made an amendment Saturday night? Mark just played some of that three-point audio there. When all four of them were in that tiebreaker, should we just have bracketed up and say 2v2 and then go to the championship?
Let's see what happens. I'm fine.
Obviously,
with it.
Halliburton didn't, make it out of the tiebreaker, the 30-second tiebreaker that they did after that. He struggled there, but I was kind of hoping, it's already awkward with 3 people in the finals. I don't really totally get that. I was kind of like, hey, let's get a quarterfinal, semifinal, and then an actual final here. All 4 have hit 26. Put 2v2 here, and who is it? Trae Young and Karl Anthony Towns, right? Those are the other two.
Well, Trae Young was my pick. Remember, if we had to move Tyrese Halliburton aside, we said who are you going to take, and I took Trae Young, and I felt good for a second.
I forgot who I even picked.
Did you take Lillard? If so, we had to boo you.
I don't know.
You didn't take Lillard, did you?
How about Karl Anthony Towns going for 50 last night?
Maybe he should have been MVP. Why can't he win MVP? Just because the West lost? Come on.
A lot of recap from All-Star Weekend. Again, more with Tony East coming up at 8:30. Gregg Doyel at 9. Level of concern with Purdue yesterday at all?
Okay, so yesterday I would say was kind of the first time where I looked at Purdue and I'm like, what are we doing here? Why are you losing that game? And I think it's a few things for me. It's probably 3 things for me. Fletcher Lawyer's not playing well right now the last 3 games, and I think it gets to Lawyer and Jones the last 3 games. Lawyer, 3 straight games, I wrote these down, in single digits. Last 3 games, he's 3 of 18, 1 of 5 from 3, and he's not the type of guy that's going to fill the stat sheet if he's not scoring the basketball. He's not a big rebound guy. He's not a big assist guy. He has come off a screen and knocked down shots, and so I thought you saw his value with some of the subbing. I thought you saw, hey, Matt Painter realized he's not making a bunch of shots. He tried to take the ball to the bucket several times, maybe thought he was fouled, and then, Jones, again, the last 3 games, I might be nitpicking here, 8 of 27, 6 of 17 from 3. And I forget who we had on we were talking about, who do we have on Butler-wise last week? Help
Nick
me
Gardner.
Here. Yes, Nick Gardner. And I was asking about Posh Alexander. He said, well, the thing about Posh is he may not score, but he's going to fill the stat sheet doing other things. And I think Jones has a little bit of that for Purdue as well. And then you look at the last 3 games, 2 assists, 6 rebounds in those 3 games. So I think it's pretty simple. At times, Edey's not going to be able to just simply bail you out every time, and those 2 guys need to knock down more shots than they are. I mean, that's kind of where I am. I thought Edey was kind of weak with the ball around the basket. I know he and Matt Painter probably
he
thought
had a
there
high
were more
turnover
fouls.
number last night.
Yeah, they probably thought, hey, there's some fouls being given here. I don't listen. It's not panic, but they're not the overall number 1 seed right now. UConn is that.
I would say one thing to keep an eye on, and again, Edey has done such a great job in his career of not being this guy. I mean, hell, look at Malik Renew right now for Indiana. But Edey usually is not a foul trouble guy. But we saw it Thursday night against Minnesota, and we saw it again yesterday. There's been a few more of those instances with him this season. And again, we're going off of the most recent efforts from Purdue, because you go back to Maui against Tennessee, you go back to the start of the Big Ten slate with Illinois, 2 games where Edey got into foul trouble, and Purdue withstood that. Minnesota got back in that game as soon as Edey went to the bench on Thursday night. If you look at yesterday, when Edey gets into that early foul trouble, Purdue looked so sloppy without him. And again,
11-2 run. That's what it was.
Wasn't that
when he went out? It was 11-2 run. They went from leading to be down by 5 at half.
And 11-2 speaks for itself. But if you were watching it, it looked even worse than that. If that's even possible, like the offensive possessions just looked ugly, and then defensively, to your point, it was kind of a layup line. And you bring up Lawyer. I mean, certainly he is a byproduct of you need help when Edey goes to the bench from a scoring standpoint. Matt Painter was pretty adamant after the game. They need more from their bench, and he made it seem like it's not just the scoring. It's like, okay, when we put you on the floor, I need some sort of production there from your bench. It seems like it's Mason Gillis or just really nobody on that end. And then the last thing I would point out, because this is probably the most common thing with Purdue and their few losses, it usually coincides with a big turnover number. And that one did. Now, the opponent they play Thursday, they'll be back inside of Mackey on Thursday against Rutgers. That's the one time this year, Andy, where they've had the big turnover number and they've overcome it in a win. But if you look at Northwestern, if you look at Nebraska, if you look at yesterday, that is there. And I bring that up because that's the number we've seen against the Fairleigh Dickinsons and the St. Peters. It has, yes, Lawyers struggled, and
sure,
you can point to some other stuff, but it's one of these things, if Purdue can just get out of its own way turnover-wise, they're so good offensively that, and as an offensive rebound team, they're naturally going to put the ball in the bucket eventually. But if you get into the teens turnover-wise, now you're flirting a bit. And they flirted with it yesterday, and it's the age-old thing when you play the interim coach. Are they going to be super motivated for the interim, or are they just going to lie down for the interim because they've already quit on the season? I don't know if it was Scooney Penn, shout out to him, and Michael Redd in the building yesterday, but it definitely was a little bit of a different Ohio State output than we're used to.
Matt Painter, after the game, talking about turnovers.
Our 3 losses are all turnovers. I think this is the lowest turnover. I think it's 14, 16, and 17. I think we got an outlier in there where we've had something in between 14 and 17 and we won. Yeah. So like our record is like off the charts since I've been at Purdue, when we have fewer turnovers and more rebounds, like 151 and 15 or something like that. But when they out-rebound us and they have fewer turnovers, which that didn't happen tonight, we're 6 and 48. So you can kind of see the importance of those stats, right? It's off the charts.
9-game win streak for Purdue is over. Again, coming up, they will host Rutgers on Thursday. For Indiana, they've now lost 8 of 12. Andy brought this up in the first hour. You couldn't have scripted it better for Indiana. You get Northwestern after a road loss late in the week at Rutgers. You get them without Ty Berry, one of their better guards. Boo Buie picks up 2 fouls midway through the first half. He sits the rest of the way. I mean, that is golden. I mean, I could not believe Indiana was favored in this one. And
yeah, by 2.5.
Yet you can't take advantage of it. I'd say, and part of me, Andy's like, are we really going to dissect these Indiana basketball games? Like, aren't we just done with the season? Like, shouldn't we just move on? But it's our job, so we will do it. your front court just got outplayed. And, I mean, look at those Northwestern bigs and what Northwestern's not known for throwing the ball into Matthew Nicholson and I forget the other guy's name, Blake something or other, and
Barnheiser. You thinking of Barnheiser?
Well, he's more.
Are you thinking of Martinelli? Is that
I was going to say the Italian guy.
Yeah.
They're not known for throwing it into those dudes and playing through them. It's Bowie, it's Barry, it's the other, Langhorn, whatever the other guard's name, and even Barnheiser can be more of a perimeter guy.
Langborg had 26 the other last night. Played
but
40
again,
minutes.
your front court just gets outplayed by them last night, and Renew is now fouled out of 4 of his last 6 games here. Mike Woodson continue to be winless against Northwestern there. That is 3 straight wins for the Wildcats in Bloomington.
Here's the biggest problem you have if you're an Indiana fan, and I mean this, is, well, it's twofold, but it all equals one. You got nothing to hold on to this season. There's not like, we have a stud freshman that we know is going to be back, or, listen, Gabe Cupps might be a nice player, but there ain't no way in hell he should be playing 31 minutes. There's no way he should be starting. And after this year, how can you trust Mike Woodson? You don't trust him to build a team or to build a modern team. He has a team that is slow. He has a team that's really not great defensively. He's got a team that can't shoot free throws and that can't shoot threes. I don't know. You watch these Indiana games, and they're a bad team, and they're bad, and they're not interesting, and there's nothing like, there's a bunch of things here we could at least bank for next year. There's none of that. You don't want any of these guys back. You would love Khalil Ware to come back. He's going to go pro. Mackenzie Mbako will try to go pro, even though he can't dribble in the Big Ten. He'll try to go pro. Some of these guys, Trey Galloway, I guess he could. all these guys except for who? X could come back, but you definitely would never want Xavier Johnson to come back. You're talking about you don't want this roster to be represented next year at all. Not going to believe in Mike Woodson building a team. He didn't have to build a team his first couple years. He was able to get complementary parts to what was a great foundation, and he did a fine job. He didn't do a great job. He did fine. He did a fine job. He was able to get to the round of 32. But now this was his first chance to build a team. And he's not built. He did not build a team. And Malik Renew is one of your leaders, and Malik Renew can't stay on the floor. He's an absolute mess right now.
I'd say one of the issues too, Andy, is if you're going to be big, and that's clearly is what Indiana's decided to do here. Okay, we'll have the 5 stars in the front court, and we're gonna. They have to be one of the biggest starting lineups in all of college basketball. They don't play to that, or they don't maybe take advantage of that. Is the better way to put it. When you watch college football and you see Navy committed to running the football, they're very good at running the football. So I get that. For Indiana, you play big, but they're not good at playing big. It's not like these guys control the paint, control the glass, dominate at will. You don't throw it into them and it's a consistent bucket, or you're getting the other team into foul trouble on a consistent basis. Again, yesterday, Northwestern's very unheralded big guys, frankly, controlled that aspect to the game there. I think that is what adds to it. I can look at it and be okay, Indiana just doesn't have good guards at all, or not acceptable level. But this Indiana front court experiment, it was a worry in the offseason in the sense of when you got into the year, you were scratching and clawing to beat these mid-major teams, and you had a 3-4 inch height advantage at every meaningful spot in the lineup, particularly in the front court. Well, now you get into Big Ten play. The height advantage is not as extreme. The talent deficiency is not as extreme, because that's usually the difference from the mid-majors to the higher conferences. It's that the big men are just a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit more skilled. Guard play can be a bit universal, and that is where Indiana just cannot take advantage whatsoever, and more often than not, it's not even an advantage for them. So you've decided to go archaic, and then the archaic way, you aren't even good at it. That is a double whammy, and that is why you're seeing a team right now that has lost 8 of 12, and the season's over.
No, they're not good at anything, and they're just besides next year, there's no like hanging on to, there's a magical run coming up in the Big Ten tournament, and you've already played Purdue twice, so there's not, maybe we can, get Purdue at the back end of the year. We played this sound in the check down in the 7 o'clock hour. Let's play it again, Mark. Here's after the game, Mike Woodson about knocking shots down. Go ahead.
It's simple. You watched the same game I did. You got to make shots. We had some good looks, and we just didn't knock them down. I mean, there's nothing scientific about it. We move the ball well enough to get open shots. You got to step up and make them. It's that simple.
Okay, so I might be nitpicky Mike Woodson. Sorry to interrupt you. I might be nitpicky Mike Woodson here, and I understand he has not done a good job this season. But, earth to Mike Woodson. Woody, you guys never knock down any shots. Ever?
Right.
There's maybe, I could go to, 3-4 games all season long where it felt like you made shots at a high clip. You don't have guys. It's not like, it didn't happen this time. The guys are underachieving. This is not who this group is to play that style of basketball. Again, if not to right at the end of the game, you would have had 4 3-pointers to end this, and you would have been well under, 30%.
That's why
to end the game.
I didn't even bring it up, Andy, because yes, of course IU can't shoot. They haven't thrown in the ocean all year long. I don't that. To me is non-existent. It's not even a point worth bringing up anymore. It is a joke, certainly, that Indiana can't shoot. But, to me, it's not like I'm going to harp on it too much. I go back to yesterday. Northwestern gets 14 offensive rebounds. Nicholson's got 14 points and 16 rebounds. That dude had 7 offensive rebounds. The Martinelli guy, he had a double-double, 13 and 13. That, if you want to focus on just the current present in the one game, moment of reacting to yesterday, Boo Buie is 3 of 14. Boo Buie is in first half foul trouble. They don't have Ty Berry. You could not have asked for anything better from trying to limit the deficiency in the backcourt that we already know about.
Trailed by 8 at halftime.
And yet Nicholson and Martinelli absolutely dominate the paint against, again, guys like Ware and Mbako. And it's more than just that of you can't control the glass. And those two guys, every time it felt like Indiana was making some sort of a run, it was those two dudes making a play for you. And certainly Bowie had a couple shots there in the second half to stave it off. Indiana nothing till Wednesday with Nebraska inside of Assembly Hall.
Yeah, but think about this. You lost. Your boy Miller Kopp was there. TJD was there. The great Trace Jackson Davis was in attendance. And you lost to Northwestern for the 3rd straight time at Assembly Hall.
The only Big Ten team Mike Woodson has yet to beat the Northwestern Wildcats 0-4 against him. I was very concerned, too. What the hell were the outfits the coaches were wearing? It looked like something I'd see my dad show me in a picture at Indiana State of him back in the 70s. Well, what were those?
And the other thing you have, if you're an Indiana fan, you have the uniforms. And old people don't like the change to the uniforms. I don't care, but people do.
Again, to me, when I look at the unis, I'm like, the only thing that matters, I feel this way about the Notre Dame Shamrock Series unis. Just if the recruits like them, that's all I really care about. Every time they pan to the bench, I thought I was seeing things with what the coaches were wearing. It was like a Belichick cutoff sweatshirt gone bad. I'd rather just cut them off.
That's the fashion now. That can be fashionable. It can. What a mess. What do we do with Indiana the rest of the season, honestly? Because you're right. We got to talk about them. But I feel like my analysis has stayed roughly.
Oh, it's all portal. It's all
roughly the same. Who do they want out of the portal? That's what we need to get Ramjons on. Who do you guys want out of the portal?
They want one of those Indiana State guards.
Oh, that's gonna fix things. I
said this to
from Indiana State
yesterday. Indiana State losers again on Saturday. That's now back-to-back losses. They're now tied with Drake, and I think Drake is above them technically in the MoVal standing. So at this point, it is pretty much all going to come down to 3 games in 4 days in Arch Madness to try and make the tournament. One thing to note about Josh Schertz and Indiana State this season, for those that haven't followed the program too closely, Andy, they don't have a bench. They do not use their bench. And if you look at their losses, Saturday, they're missing one of their starters, Jason Kent. You go back to the Alabama game, Robbie Avila did not play in that game. If you're Josh Schertz, I think you're getting to a point in the season where playing these dudes 40 minutes in your starters, you might need to watch a little bit of that. do you scale it back to 32, 34? Because when you get to the 3 games in 4 days in Arch Madness, you're going to have to make sure those dudes are as fresh as they can be. I know it's kind of a delicate situation because you want to get one of the top 1 or 2 seeds because you still want to make sure you get that off day within Arch Madness. But I think that's a real conversation that he's got to have with this coaching staff of, and this often happens with the mid-majors. You just don't go very deep into your bench. You know, playing Julian Larry and Isaiah Swope and Ryan Conwell and Robbie V, playing them the amount of minutes they've been playing them, do you try and limit that a little bit here down the stretch? You might lose another game, but Andy, again, at this point, all that matters is the automatic bid. So can you get legs as fresh as possible come March Madness?
Yeah, to me, I said this. I joked about it. It's not the way to feel, but the only positive with this weekend for Indiana State, watching some of that game, was, let's just be honest, we know they're going to have to win the Missouri Valley now. Like, I mean, you said it. They're going to have to win the conference
Why
tournament.
haven't they fallen further in the net?
I have no idea.
Because you are a net guy.
Well, I'm not a net guy.
Or at least you follow it.
I follow the net.
Like,
yeah,
I
wish I didn't have to, but that's a whole different conversation.
I saw Butler dropped, I want to say it was 9 spots after losing to Creighton.
At home, right.
And Indiana State only dropped 4.
Oh, I would have plummeted Indiana State. Yeah, I have no idea.
And I guess Butler lost by a little more. And, you know, obviously there's other teams that win and they jump you. That probably plays into some of it with Butler there. But, I mean, right now, if you look just strictly at the net, Indiana State's 32 and Butler's like mid-50s.
Yeah. I think Butler in the last 2 games, even though it's against good teams, I feel like they've played their way to the wrong side of the bubble.
Lenardi has them in the Dayton games.
Yeah,
he's got them as the 65th team right now.
And they have consistently been they've missed Dayton, right? They've been one of the last teams, but they've been a team that's got that bye and not had to play. So, I mean, listen, if you're Thad Matta, just get in. I mean, to me, that's how, you know, you're in a rebuild there at Butler. Unlike a place like Indiana, Butler has to feel like, okay, we are building with something. But going back to Indiana State, the only positive is that coaching staff is not going to have to worry, and I mean this, is not going to have to worry about the woe is me, right? About relying on the committee to let them in or anything like that.
Yeah, they have given the committee plenty of reason to leave them out.
It's right now, if they don't win the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, they're not going to make the NCAA tournament. And guess what? They're not going to have anyone with who they've lost to the last 2 games. They're not going to have anyone come to their defense. See, that was going to be a tricky situation. It was going to be, you know, if we win a bunch of games, but maybe you threw out if they lose in the final minutes in the conference championship
on a
game,
neutral floor against a quality team,
against a really good team like a Drake, you know, are you really going to leave them out? And that was going to be the conversation and the predicament. There is no conversation. There is no predicament. They're going to have to win their conference tournament. And guess what? They know that. There won't be that shred of woe is me. What's the committee going to do to little old Indiana State? None of it.
More All-Star game conversation coming up here. Tony East going to join us in about 5 minutes. We'll also get set up for the Pacers' second half of the season, which begins on Thursday. Gregg Doyel, who was in the building last night inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, coming up at 9. Let's hit a morning check down.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
All right, let's start with Purdue, 73-69 losers at Ohio State. I really thought one of the things that really just stood out for me was not only did they only shoot 3 3-pointers or make 3 3-pointers, did Purdue, they only shot 9 of them throughout the game. Matt Painter on that very subject post-game.
If you don't have them and they take them away, you don't want to shoot them. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, you still want to go. And I think what they really got us to do from a decision-making standpoint, if we could have it back, like our intermediate shots. Like, I think we had a stretch there in the second half where we didn't take very many and we played better offensively. In the first half, we had too many intermediate shots, kind of in between a pull-up and a floater, to where it just wasn't, something that you would think is a strength of ours.
Yeah, so again, losers last night. I just didn't love how Purdue played. 73-69, your final there. Moving to Indiana, we just talked about it. Ugly as well in Assembly Hall, 76-72. Malik Renew now back-to-back games. He's fouled out just 9 points in the loss. Here's Mike Woodson postgame on his forward.
Well, I wasn't happy with him after the game, and after he had the 2, I thought the third foul it came so fast. I mean, he reached over the guy, and he didn't, at the time, didn't think he fouled, but I thought it was a foul. And the 5th foul came so fast, I couldn't get him out, from the bump up top in the pick and roll. So, I mean, we just got to keep working with him because we need him on the basketball floor.
For Indiana, it'll be Nebraska coming up Wednesday. Purdue has got Rutgers, both of those home games for those respective programs. Last night over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse, the game itself, an absolute joke. The East wins 211-186. I guess, certainly we can gripe about Tyrese Halliburton. Frankly, he probably should have got the MVP after the first 5 threes of the game. But the All-Star game has turned into just who can shoot from as far out as possible, and that's pretty much it. When Damian Lillard literally makes 2 half-court shots and only attempts 2, he's probably going to win MVP, and he did 7-5 on the voting for the MVP of the All-Star game. Again, I vote for the Elam ending coming back. I'm not going to act like there's anything else. Even the Elam ending is not going to improve it much, but it's just could not be further from any sort of display of actual basketball. Nonetheless, thought it was a great environment inside of that building, and just walking downtown last night into the building was a pretty cool atmosphere there. Seems like All-Star Weekend went fairly well. Logistically, I'll continue to repeat the efficiency, the creative nature, the passion. I think I was alive and well from us hosting it, so kudos to everyone involved on that. Again, Halliburton last night, he attempted 15 shots, 14 of them behind the arc, 27 minutes, 32 points, 6 assists. Damian Lillard chucked and chucked and chucked, and he took home All-Star Game MVP. For the Pacers now, it is rest like no other today. Rick Carlisle and company back to practice tomorrow. They will host the Pistons on Thursday. They will not play Friday, Saturday, but a few home games for the Pacers here coming out of the break.
Did I read it right that Doc Rivers is giving the money, the paycheck, on winning the All-Star game to Adrian Griffin?
Really?
I think they said that on the broadcast.
Shout out,
I don't know if you caught that. How about that?
Shout out to Steph Curry. He did a $1,000 to the IPS middle school basketball programs for every point he scored last night.
Oh, did he? That's awesome.
I'm sitting there in my seats rooting for a whole lot of Steph. 16 points, so 16,000 right there from Steph Curry to the IPS middle school basketball program. So love seeing that from Steph. All right, Tony East, he was in the building last night. He was following the Pacers around all weekend long. He'll join us next.
Hey, it's JMV for CarX. Winter driving equals potholes.
The Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Tony East going to join us here in just a second. Gregg Doyel will join us as well coming up in the 9 o'clock hour. All-Star festivities are out. All the private jets. Do the private jets leave last night or do they leave this morning?
I want to see one of those maps today where like all the private jets dispersed from Indianapolis. I would guess some did leave last night, but I'm sure there were some lingering parties into the wee hours of last night.
You'll like this. Around Kentucky Derby time. So where I used to live in southern Indiana, it was by a smaller southern Indiana, not the Louisville airport, but a lot of people went in and out of the southern Indiana airport. It's historically where Bobby Petrino met Auburn to try to sneak out of town, if you remember.
Juicy.
But we could lay out in our yard on a Sunday, and it was just one private plane after another flying over us. So fantastic weekend. Sights and sounds. I'm sure there'll be many pieces written, all the video, audio. I know all the shows around here will be talking about the different experiences that we had as well. All right, Tony East joining us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Tony joins us here, Locked On Pacers, Forbes, and of course, SI.com. Tony, let's start with this, and a very good morning to you. What's a big NBA big picture takeaway that maybe hits your mind coming from this weekend? And what would be a Pacers item, a Pacers takeaway, as well, as you were right in the midst of all the coverage over the past 3 or 4 days or so?
Pacers takeaway would be all about just Tyrese Halliburton and his place in the league, right? Like, these kind of weekends can have sort of a launch pad effect on players. Like last year, for example, Lauri Markkanen and in Utah, right, was an all-star for the first time in his home city, and now is considered one of the premier talents in the league, one of the best shooters in the NBA, and a guy that was talked about as like, man, could this be the guy that shakes up the NBA as the acquisition this year in a trade? And he wasn't traded, but he's that good. And it was sort of people knew who he was, but now it was really quite the change for his career trajectory and perception and all that kind of stuff. And of course, there was the funny moment for him with getting picked last in the All-Star draft, which didn't happen, but Halliburton played amazing in Indy and won some events and was great in the All-Star game and had his home crowd. I mean, that kind of stuff can be so significant for a player, not only locally, but nationally as well. And for Halliburton to have that moment, I think was significant nationally and for the NBA in general. I mean, there were so many new things that I think the theme from the weekend and what will be looked back on is like stuff that impacts future All-Star weekends, whether that's LED courts or more LED courts. That was really cool to see in person. I think a lot of people really liked that if you were there. And if you saw it on TV, some people liked it. Some people not at all. Maybe changes to the actual All-Star game. That was the hot topic last night. Everybody hated it. 211 points. Adam Silver with the longest pause in human history when discussing how many points the Eastern Conference scored in the game afterwards. The Rising Stars format was new. It was only the second ever G League Next Up game. Like, there's just so much stuff that either new or tweaked or has been discussed as needing tweaks that could be something the league looks at in the future, because the theme this year was back to basketball. I'd wonder if in future years the theme is, maybe a little tweaked just to align with the NBA's goals a little bit differently.
Tony, what was the best thing you saw all weekend long, or maybe your favorite moment from All-Star Weekend? Then on the flip side, what was the thing that I guess you didn't like the most from the weekend?
I loved the Steph versus Sabrina on Saturday. That was so cool. Just like, it's a seminal moment for the sport, right? To be able to have something like that happen. And, Tim Reynolds of the Associated Press asked a question like this in the presser after the game. But, if it was like 21-18 was the final score or something like that, and it was still cool because it was close and they shot it okay, like, yeah, it would have been cool and it would have been fun. But to have it be 26-29 where they're both just,
when she hit those first 6 or 7, Tony, that might have been the loudest thing in Lucas Oil all night long.
Yeah, I mean, it was sweet. And then, of course, Steph Curry, he was unbelievable. But, like, those were the two. I mean, Sabrina tied the best score from the actual three-point contest of any player, right? So those are the two best shooting rounds of the whole night, like, in that same contest. I mean, it was awesome for the sport. It was awesome for the women's game. I mean, it was just an absolutely fantastic thing. And they were both talking about after it, like, things they would like to potentially do with it in the future, like adding another player to both of them on teams or something like that. Like, the fact that they already have thought about it like that, I think that it was revealed from the Nielsen ratings that it was like the top moment or the most viewed moment of the whole thing on Saturday. I think that was huge for the sport and for both leagues, the WN and the men's NBA, that kind of happened. What was the other one? The thing I saw that I liked the least, 211 points, I think. I mean, that was I like the All-Star game more than most people just because my expectations are lower, but there just becomes a point where it's like we're running out the clock here. Like I should have. I think that next year's story, I'll bring a stopwatch and time how long Tyrese Halliburton's at the scores table before he checks in every time because there's just no stoppages in the game. It's just back and forth with buckets.
I actually kind of liked when the Elam ending was utilized. I get we're not going to get this hard-nosed defense and, okay, I fully get that. But I think you saw it in the Rising Stars game Friday night. When you put a target score out there, it at least gives a little bit more. I'm not acting like it's earth-shattering, but to me, that is something I enjoyed. And for it to be taken out of the game, I just think you get into even a bigger joke than it was.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like people have talked about the All-Star game being rudderless for a while, and it kind of has been, but I think it was 2020, the year they also were honoring Kobe with the jerseys and stuff like that, 2021. Like that one, it was 152 to 152, and the target score was 157, and like they were defending and running plays and like trapping pick and rolls for like 3 minutes. Like that was like, even if the rest of the game wasn't that exciting, that was really cool. That was a key moment. And so I get why they had the theme they did and wanted to go back to East and did that. But, Tyrese Halliburton said it at the end of and to be clear, I like the All-Star game. Like I enjoy most NBA events, but Tyrese Halliburton said it in late January. Like it was the exact same day that we were asking Tyrese Halliburton about the 65-game rule and injuries and returning to the floor. He was asked about the All-Star game and how it can be more competitive. And he's like, well, we're not trying to get hurt because of this. And, their incentives are, and they are paid to play for their team and win for their team. And winning the All-Star game means nothing for their team. And, they aren't paid to do so. So I totally understand why the incentives for the players are what they are. And I think this is going to be what it is unless there's an Elam ending or significant incentives or something like that.
Tony East joins us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Should Tyrese Halliburton have won MVP last night? Did it get ripped off? How big of a deal is this? Did you boo Dame Lillard? I'm throwing all these questions at you, Tony. What do you think?
I did not boo Dame. I was not outraged by the result. Like, I think it was kind of very Tyrese in a way because the reason he didn't win MVP, and I think some people have assessed this correctly, is he wasn't selfish. He passed the ball. He deferred at times throughout the game, right? Like, I think it's perfectly fitting that the guy who won MVP, his highlights were shots. Dame hit 2 half-court shots, right? One that was with all his legs in the first half and one that took all his arms because he was exhausted in the second half. And, like, those are sweet. That people remember the who's and odds of those. Halliburton tried to have his big highlight be the, recreating the Jason Williams pass from the 2000 rookie-sophomore game, right? When he went for the elbow pass. Giving up the ball was what his big highlight was trying to be. And maybe you could say the 5 threes in a row. That was just a crazy crescendo moment. But, like, he tried to recreate an iconic moment, and he passed it to Dame Lillard with that play, fittingly enough. And Dame missed that 3 of all the ones to miss. So I think there's definitely an argument to be made, right? Like, they were close in every stat, and Halliburton was more efficient. And, look, I think there is an element of you get a little bump in your home city for All-Star Game MVP because it's not like that's a thing that people talk about in any sort of, legacy or talent discussions. But I know I am not outraged by the result, even though, I did laugh at the people talking about like the Bucks boxing him out and the Bucks head coach, 2 Bucks players not giving him the ball.
They freeze him, Tony.
Yeah, they did. Come on, believe in these things. There's one guy that played more minutes than Halliburton in the Eastern Conference. His name was Dame Lillard.
Which is honestly a good thing, I think, if you're a Pacers fan watching Dame play that many minutes. 7-5 for those that care was the All-Star voting from last night on the MVP award.
Can I say that maybe Karl Towns has also a big gripe for getting robbed? He played really well.
50.
And yeah, he hit 50 points, and people were saying like I guess it was between Dame and Ty because they were on the winning team. But I mean, did you get any credit for winning a game that was 211 to 186 or whatever it was? Like, Cat was really good too. I don't know.
I think the most memorable moment, honestly, was the Halliburton 5-3 flurry there to start the game. I will say Lillard stepping into those half-court shots and hitting both of them, shooting them like it was a free throw was pretty darn impressive by him. Again, Tony East is with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. You can read his work over on SI.com. Locked On Pacers, always a great listen. He was a very busy man throughout All-Star Weekend, so we appreciate his time here on this Monday morning. Shifting gears to the final 26 games. Thursday will be the Pacers back in action against the Pistons. I believe back to practice tomorrow for the Pacers. Your biggest non-related health question for this team for the final 26 games?
Ooh, not related to health question. I mean, their results recently have just kind of felt, very roller coastery, which is surprising because, the numbers of the Pacers with Siakam and Halbert on the court are like fantastic since the trade, right? Like a really great net rating. Their offense is fantastic. So I think my questions would be, one, is that real, right? Are they really that good with both of their stars on the floor? Because it seems like Halbert's going to be able to play more, right? Down the stretch, obviously, he played 34 minutes in the last game before the break and played 27 minutes in the game last night, like you alluded to. And he even said, like, yeah, I felt good, and I jumped off one leg for that dunk in the skills challenge, and everything was great in the response to that. Like, that's great for him. So if he can play his normal minutes load and can have all the bursts in the world and all that kind of stuff, that of course matters. And so if they can sustain that number, which I suspect they can, they've played well off of each other even without a ton of time together. It's can the rest of the team and mostly the bench units where they're not both playing together figure it out and be a little more normalized, right? Like the rotation is shaken up when Pascal Siakam's added to the mix. Jalen Smith's back with the bench groups, and of course Buddy Hield's been traded now, so the second unit has looked different quite literally since the trades. And maybe it's just that. It's just that it's a different unit. Maybe it's that there's just been so much mixing and matching because of the injuries they've had. But, their bench was so good for so much of the season. It was such a big strength, and their bench is still solid, but it's lost them at least 2 games straight up since the trade and hasn't been nearly as good. So these Halliburton plus Siakam minutes are great, and then they're still losing because, the bench was awful in Portland. I mean, their worst game of the season. In that Hornets game, they just scored 102. Their bench was terrible in that game. It's just I think 2 things will be big for me. Is it sustainable with Tyrese plus Pascal? Because that matters for this season and beyond, right? That would kind of signal the Pacers have something here for the next couple of years. But also, can the bench recover? Can the new look bench unit be good enough that the Pacers look like they did early in the season? Because then if Tyrese and Pascal aren't as good together as those numbers, at least they can still get some wins and be a good team. And of course, the other thing is the standings. Can they hold on to 6th? Because that is a very tight race, and the Sixers are vulnerable now. So I'll be curious about that as well.
Tony, is there any update on Aaron Nesmith? Have you heard anything on his ankle shin from last Wednesday? I
haven't. He wasn't at All-Star Weekend. I can't blame him for getting out of town with everything going on. But I think Dustin reported that Carlisle actually walked to the arena after that game, which is good news, I suppose. But when he had the tape on the shin already, if it's a shin injury, maybe it could be something that is bugging him. So I think we'll learn more like tomorrow or Wednesday. But as of now, nothing.
Tony East with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Last one for me, Tony. Where do you think this team ultimately finishes? For me, you look at it, and boy, at 31-25, they're just a couple games away from being up at the 4 seed. They're also a game away from being the 9 seed or being the 8 seed, I should say. I guess in the middle then would be the 6. Where do you think this team ultimately will finish? I know we're looking ahead 26 games here, but it's going to be, quite the finish here. They need to be out of that 7 seed. What do you think happens?
And my gut is saying 7, and I say that because, I think the Heat are just they played really well heading into the break. They made an upgrading trade getting Terry Rozier. They were really unhealthy for a stretch here in like January, early February. And so if the Heat can get rolling, I think they are better than the Pacers, even though the Pacers did beat them once. So they're just really talented, and I can never bet against an Eric Spoelstra team. But the wild card effect of this is Philly, because who knows how long Embiid is specifically going to be out for, and they've won some games since the trade deadline. Buddy Hield's playing well for them. Tyrese Maxey's on that team. They're not a pushover, but they were like 3-7 in their last 10 games going into the break, and they clearly aren't as good without an MVP, and that's not shocking or anything. But it's just really hard for me to figure out where they're going to finish. Can they figure stuff out and adjust, or are they actually catchable? If a 60% win percentage team can keep up with them over the course of the season, then 6 feels attainable for the Pacers, even if the Heat pass them, right? But I think on aggregate, I think them and the Magic will probably be pretty similar on level for the rest of the season. Two kind of young teams who haven't had a stretch run with expectations yet. But I think Miami and Philly are going to be the wild card. So if you had to bet right now, I'd say 7th, and then a very tough plan, and hope to win that first game so you don't play Boston in the first round. But 6th is on the table, 5th is maybe on the table, but it's impossible to me for them to fall to 9th sans just absolute disaster of injuries, because there's a big cushion between them and that. It's the Bulls in 9th, and those teams are just so inconsistent down there.
Tony, last one. Again, thank you for the time here on this Monday morning. You wrote, this is the first time we've talked since the Buddy Hield trade, and there was something that you wrote in one of your pieces explaining how the new CBA rewards strong drafting early in round 2. As much as you can dumb it down for me and maybe even our audience out there, could you share exactly what all that entails? Because, again, the Pacers will have a high second-round draft pick this year is the thought.
Yeah, I mean, in general, strong drafting is always rewarded just because it's a good player, right? But specifically, there's the second-round pick exception now that, it makes the second round just all the more valuable, especially for a team like the Pacers that's now, over the cap and tax conscious, because you can sign players without using your exceptions or anything like that to a 3 or 4 year deal. So not only does that make the pick valuable in terms of getting the player you draft on a contract that makes sense and is longer, and you actually are willing to invest in them because they're on your team for a long time and all that, but now the pick is valuable to every team, right? Because every team can do that, even other teams with tax concerns or other teams with poor draft capital. So the pick becomes more valuable from a player development perspective, especially for a Pacers team that, their top pick in the second round from that Buddy Hield trade could be their best pick in this draft, right? So that'll be interesting to see. And they've done well with top picks in the second round, getting them hard. They traded the 31st pick in Aaron Holiday for the Isaiah Jackson pick in the first round, right? Like, they've done well with picks in that kind of area. But also it has more demand for other teams because it can be so valuable from a cap perspective now in a way that it wasn't before. And so it still is the 30-whatever pick that they'll have, 36, 38, 37, whatever. But it has more value than it did 2 years ago. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a seller's trade from a team that's trying to win, which is still interesting. But it has value that could be used in the future. And I think, Chad Buchanan kind of explained it that way, as when you are thinking long-term, adding those pieces to your team can be important. They had that late first-round pick last year that they flipped and pushed back a year, and all of a sudden it's part of the Pascal Siakam trade. So you just never know with these picks, but these early second-rounders are a tool now, and the Pacers have it.
Tony, enjoyed running into you last night. As I said to you, great coverage all weekend long. I know it's probably a bit exhausting for you, so thanks for making time with us here on this Monday morning, and we'll certainly be reading later in the week.
Yeah, great to see you, Kevin. It was a good time.
Tony East right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Back to practice tomorrow, Thursday night. The Pistons in town as the Pacers begin their final 26 games of the season. All right, Gregg Doyel joins us in 10.
Hey, it's Andy Sweeney for Zero Res of Indy.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Gregg Doyel from the Star going to join us here in just a few minutes. He had a strong take on, shockingly, Damian Lillard. We'll dive into that here in about 5 or 6 minutes. Saying I'm off today. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Are you hungover from All-Star Weekend?
No idea. No, I went to bed. I guess probably earlier than you did. I fell asleep at some point in the second half and kind of woke up in this morning, kind of watched the rest.
Fell asleep watching that game? How?
Well, I did. I fell asleep. It was a very long weekend for your boy. Speaking of having a strong take, there we go. Did you see my man Rick Pitino, what he said over the weekend? Did you see any of this?
I need to watch the full presser because the quotes are electric.
He's like, yeah, basically when we got to St. John's, we didn't get to see any of the players, so I just took whoever I could. And we're not a good team. We're not a smart team. We're not an athletic team, and we stink. He basically said, yeah, we stink. It's one of the great, terrible moments of his life. And if you know Rick,
he was ripping dudes.
If you know Rick, he's had some bad moments in his life. It was great.
He was absolutely ripping
and
dudes.
They stink, by the way.
2-11, by the way. That was the final score last night for the Eastern Conference. They set a record there. Defense highly, highly optional in that one. 7-5. That was the vote for MVP. So we were very close to getting the co-MVP there for Damian Lillard and Tyrese Halliburton. Again, to me, as I said to Tony East just a few minutes ago, most memorable thing from last night, I think, will be the Halliburton 5 for 5 to start the game.
Sure.
I mean, he hit the fifth one from the logo.
Oh, I know.
And then Jokic and Durant are like double teaming him on the next possession. I mean, it was that to me was the highlight from last night. All right, Gregg Doyel was there. Much more with him. The Indy Star columnist joins us next.
The Ride with JMV.
Mathurin down to the baseline, tough jumper, good, and it's over. Benedict Mathurin with a hand in his face, 18 points for the Indiana Pacer, second-year man, and he leads Team Jalen into the championship. They're getting some good-looking shots here. This is Halliburton, no good. Miles Turner left of the mark, 23 seconds to go. Shot in the air goes! Tyrese Halliburton holding the pose with 20.5 seconds to go. And the hometown team has done it again. Team Pacers are your champs.
It's good to have success here in Indy. The fans wanted to see us have a good showing, and we did. Now it's time for me to hold my end of the bargain three-point contest.
Second one, 22. Third one on its way, 24. Fourth one's good, 26. And his last ball, he missed it. Short and flat to the side. 26 for Halliburton, tying Trae Young. 17-14 East behind this man, Halliburton. A logo three. He's feeling it, and he knocks it home. An early show for Tyrese Halliburton. 5 for 5 from distance.
All right, the sounds of the weekend. What a weekend here in Indianapolis. Our All-Star festivities. We were out there on Friday. The NBA crossover event was jam-packed on Friday, Saturday. Great to go out there. So many players walking around. Then, of course, all the festivities Friday, Saturday. And no doubt the hot takes are out there on the All-Star game. The competitiveness, if you will, the All-Star game. We'll get to all of that as well. All right, 9 o'clock hour here. Gregg Doyel is going to join us here in just a second. Reminder, we'll get to our goats of the weekend. We also have a pop quiz coming up this hour as well. So lots to accomplish here as we broadcast live from the DriveHubler.com studios. All right, from the Indianapolis Star, Gregg Doyel joining us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Gregg, good morning. Thank you for joining us. I know you wrote a column about this, so I want to give you a chance to kind of long form talk about it, if you will. Dame Lillard, the amount of shots he took, winning the MVP from Halliburton last night. Go ahead, my friend.
Well, it was disgusting. Listen, this is not a game. We all saw it. This is not a game where if you're really good, you're going to win the MVP. This has become a game. Last night it was a game where whoever takes the most shots on the winning team is going to win the MVP because there's no defense, and all these guys are great. You give basically shoot around. You give them shoot around shots, they're going to make most of them. That's what we saw. So whoever decides, you know what, I think I should get the MVP is going to go get it. And Lillard decided early on, I think I'm going to go get the MVP. And this isn't – Halliburton was the guy. It's his city. He was the guy in the first quarter, 15 points in 90 seconds. At that point, it's pretty much over. Just play the game out, let everybody get equal shots, and he's going to have 50. But they didn't do that. And because Halliburton himself, and it's his fault really in a way, he's so unselfish, he actually thought he was playing basketball, poor guy. He was passing the ball to everybody, including Lillard. So I'm just ticked off. I'll get over it. We'll all get over it. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime event for our city, but for Halliburton in our city, and we love Halliburton. And it wasn't his moment out of pity, out of anything. It was his moment, and Lillard said, nah, I'm going to go ahead and take this moment from you. He was a pig. He was a ball hog.
Gregg, thank you for the time here on this Monday morning. I'll leave it pretty open-ended. What was the favorite thing you observed from All-Star Weekend, and what was the thing that you did not like the most from All-Star Weekend?
Favorite thing I observed was the Kristen Moore House. It was I was there on the NBA Legacy, NBA Cares project. It was Thursday. They unveiled about $250,000 renovations to the Kristen Moore House, which is a West Side in Hawville community center where they do education and all kinds of stuff. I mean, you should walk through the halls of there. It's so humble and beautiful and selfless, and the flyers they're handing out for, things like, here's how you get your GED, for example, if you need that. And it's the real world. Do we want any kid to aspire to the GED? Of course not. But in the real world, for some kids, that's the best they're going to do. And the Chris Moore House, and it's a lot more than that. I'm just saying that's an example of the kind of thing that they don't want you slipping through the cracks. And so the NBA and the Pacers came along and added a whole lot of spackle. And it was beautiful. And I saw 50 kids on the floor just agog at Miles Turner and people like that. The governor was there. It was beautiful. The All-Star game comes to town, and there were 3 events. Friday night was the Rising Stars. Saturday, of course, we all know, shooting the slam dunk and all that, and the game was Sunday. I was originally supposed to do all 3, my choice, and then decided, no, I need to write about the Kansas City, shooting. I just need to write about that because now the sports world's coming our way, and what is IMPD doing, to stop it if it happens here? And then the Chris Morehouse thing happened, and I was just really happy to write about two real things. I wasn't happy to write about shooting, but I was happy to write about real stuff because the All-Star Weekend, I'm glad it's here. I'll be done soliloquying in a minute, but I'm glad it's here. Millions and millions, tens of millions, who knows how much benefit we get out of this. Glad it was here. The only problem with it is that there's an actual game they play, and everything else about it, just kind of. I'm sorry to be the Grinch, but it all kind of sucks. I mean, it's all over the top festivities, and I get a lot of people. A lot of people like over top festivities. I like real. I prefer real, and there's nothing about that that's real.
You brought up once in a lifetime event, and Gregg Doyel from the Indianapolis Stars with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. You brought up once in a lifetime event. You think better chance our city hosts a Super Bowl again in the next 30 years or an NBA All-Star game?
Great question. Super Bowl. I think I think they're going to rotate that enough. Something will happen whether in the next 30 years we get a new. 30 years is a long time, and Lucas Oil's 10 years old, however old it is. We'll get a new stadium perhaps by then, or something will happen, an ownership shift or something. We'll need to get rewarded to keep the NFL, the team here. I think that'll happen. I think who was it? Herb Simon said last night, they interviewed him on the court afterwards, and he was kind of joking but kind of not, and he said, I'm glad that I hope you guys all had a good time here in town, and I'm looking forward to when we get to host this thing again in 40 years, I think is what he said. So anyway, neither one's likely to happen anytime soon. If you told me to bet money in the next 20 years, bet everything you got, we will have an All-Star game or Super Bowl here in the next 20 years, or we will not, I would bet not.
Gregg Doyel with us, Payless Liquors Hotline from the Indianapolis Star. Tons of great coverage from the Star, but obviously, Gregg, out and about with the people this weekend. I saw you tweet this when you were, promoting your appearance coming up on the show here this morning. You wanted to go after Draymond Green as well. Green was really one of the only ones who was outspoken about the game and the weekend being here in Indianapolis, I believe.
Yeah, well, sometimes you can measure yourself by who your enemies are, and you're happy about it. Like there are certain people on Twitter that I've blocked, and I'm like, I'm doing something right. If I don't want to allow you access to my Twitter, then I'm okay with who I am. And if Draymond Green is the voice against us, then you don't want anybody speaking out. But if it's only Draymond Green, that guy, he's out of control. He's immature. He's out of control. He hasn't grown up yet. You can tell by the way he acts. He's out of control. And if he's the guy that thinks Indianapolis isn't cool enough, like if he's still playing that card, like brother, you make $20-30 million a year. You can fly to Cabo. You can go anywhere you want and have a great time. You don't need the All-Star game to fly you somewhere so you can have fun in February. You can have fun round the clock. The All-Star game isn't about that. It's not about – if you still think the All-Star game is about, like, I want to go somewhere for 3 days and drink somewhere where there's a bunch of strip clubs. If that's what you think you need at this point in your life, then the joke's on you. So he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he rarely does. And again, if he's the voice of the wilderness, I'm okay because John the Baptist, he ain't.
And the Red Garter's underrated, from what I hear. Not from a in-person opinion there. Boy, I didn't have John the Baptist on the old bingo card here for Gregg Doyel. Gregg Doyel is with us here from the Indianapolis Star.
Voice in the wilderness, though.
I agree with you, Gregg. I agree with you on that one.
I would just add one more point too, Gregg, to the point of like, okay, why do I need to listen to an NBA player tell me what he wants out of the All-Star game? To me, it revolves around three things. Do you put on an efficient event? Do you put on a creative event? And do you put on a passionate event from people in your community? And there's no way you can tell me otherwise that we didn't check all three of those boxes.
No way. And especially, we had degree of difficulty. It's like you got to. Some people get more credit. Like the gymnast that tries 4 flips gets scored on a higher level than the gymnast that tries 2. There is degree of difficulty. And we had snow. We had snow fall, an unexpectedly large amount fall the day everybody was arriving, and that is about as unexpected. And we've seen worse unexpected events. Okay, Kansas City. Let's not go overboard, but that was, as far as non-tragedies, as unexpected and complicated as an event as we were going to have right before the All-Star game, and we still nailed it. And there's just no question we're the best. When I said I don't think we're going to get a Super Bowl or All-Star game, not because we don't deserve it. We should be just like the Final Four is here every 5 or 6 years, and that's because the NCAA is in town. I get it. we should be on a rotation for the Super Bowl too. It's that good. But I think one reason why Draymond probably is whining and why we won't get it back again is I think the NBA, just like the Super Bowl, wants their fans to go somewhere where they know it won't snow because they're trying to. It's all about money, and they're trying to sell as many tickets as possible and as many plane tickets as possible, even if you can't go to the game because the games will be sold out. But they want people in that town, and they know people aren't going to be flying to Minneapolis all that often in January and February, but they'll be flying to Atlanta and parts south.
He's Gregg Doyel. He's with us here from the Indianapolis Star. Greg, about 20 minutes ago, Jim Irsay, his account, I guess, tweeted, big congrats to Herb and Pacers. A great job of hosting NBA All-Star Weekend. We've seen, a couple of tweets from Jim in the last few weeks. When do you think's the next time we see him in person?
Probably training camp. I don't know why we would. I mean, in a vacuum, I don't really know why we would see him before that. I don't know that we see him annually at the Combine. Do you, Kevin? I know you go every year. Do we see him there? I don't think we do.
We don't. The two items on the calendar I would point to of when we do see him annually is in about a month, a little over a month, the league's annual meetings, I believe, in Orlando this year. Irsay usually, I believe you guys usually send like Joel or Nate Atkins down there for that.
Right.
So that is when he typically speaks to the media. And then every draft, the Saturday of the draft, is when he comes into the media room or what. I guess we've gone into his office before and had a little powwow in there. So those are the two events I've pointed to, Greg, of just kind of letting our audience know if it's a normal offseason, owners' meetings in late March, the draft in late April, that is when we typically see him.
Then I think we'll see him in late March. I don't have any insight into this, but the only thing all I have is common sense, and despite how much I might attack people sometimes, decency. And my common sense, my decency meter tells me the Colts in no way, after everybody had their fears about Irsay, rumors were everywhere. We all thought what we thought, and none of us thought it was going to be good. And for somebody to have tweets coming out from his account implying that he's okay or on the mend or whatever, for that to not be true, for them to, like, we were already prepared for the worst. We were, and I don't want to say any more about it, but we were all prepared for the worst. And now for them, there's just no way they would dishonestly, insincerely give us hope that we're not getting the worst. So I suspect he's turned a corner, whatever, and I have no idea what corner he had to get around, zero idea, but I suspect he's turned a corner. And late March is 6 weeks away from now, which is 8 or 9 or 10 weeks away from when he first tweeted out that, hey, I'm doing okay or whatever. So we'll see him then. And if we don't, we'll know, that we'll have clarity, but I cannot believe the Colts and Irsay and the family would do this, frankly, to us and let us think everything's okay if they all know. It's like when you tell your friends, and I remember doing this when I was younger, playing golf with people, and you tell them the night before, hey, we're going to play golf tomorrow. Have you ever played? Yeah, I've played before. What do you shoot? Yeah, I shoot. I'm a scratch golfer. And the next morning you're going to get out there and dump your first tee shot. Well, you don't lie when you know you're going to get called out for lying the first chance you get. Like, you don't say you shoot in the 90s and then go shoot a 140. You just don't do that. I mean, some people do, but idiots. The Colts aren't idiots. I think he's going to be okay.
Gregg Doyel with us here on the Wake Up Call on the Payless Liquors Hotline as a way to bring up both IU and Purdue college basketball-wise. Big picture, what has this season done for you as it pertains to Mike Woodson and his future and his competence in building a team? And then the small picture, any worry, I don't know how much you saw of Purdue yesterday, but Purdue going on the road and losing to Ohio State.
Yeah, I wasn't able to watch either, so I'm not going to pretend I did. But sometimes on things like this, you kind of only need the score and maybe even the box score to tell you what's going on, especially this late in the season for both. And to answer your question about Woodson, I forget how you worded it, but I was thinking, what has he done? What has happened to your belief?
Yeah,
crushed it. I don't have any.
Just big picture here. I mean, this is such a rough season. It's easy to say, well, don't let it happen again. But boy, he's got to go out and really rebuild a team. This team that they put out this season, it's not good enough to go anywhere.
No, he's done. Do I think he's done after this year? No, I don't. I don't think. I know that barring something crazy, and something crazy would be IU not winning again this year, and that changes the calculus. Okay, when I say what I'm about to say, that assumes they're going to win a few more games. Okay, but if they go 0 for the rest of the way, it's over. He's out. Do I know that? No, but do I think? What I think and what I actually kind of believe, what I know is that IU is in no way, shape, or form thinking about firing Mike Woodson, a beloved alum, a Bob Knight guy, and everything else that comes with Mike Woodson. There's no way you fire him after 3 years. You just don't do it, and they won't do it. Now, if they don't win again, everything changes. Everything changes. But so what has he done? He's shown me that Trace Jackson Davis carried because there's nothing about him that gives you in confidence. Nothing. The way he's put this roster together, the way he's gotten his roster to play hard, the way they are or are not under control. You can't tell me one thing we've seen since Trace Jackson Davis left that makes you think, you know what, Mike Woodson might be the guy. Not one. There's not one. And yeah, you can say, well, you got to give him more time, and he's going to get one more year. But at his age, you'll get a lot of time. And this is a big turnaround for me because about a year ago when Dusty May had FAU riding high, and of course Trace was still here, and I was looking at a story I wrote, or at least the headline. The headline says nobody's pushing out Mike Woodson, but Dusty May's got next. And I think my tweet even said Mike Woodson's doing great. Not trying to say anything about Mike Woodson, but Dusty May will be next. And I would never write those words. Nobody's pushing out Woodson, or he's doing great. Because now I realize, no, you're not. Trace Jackson Davis did great for you. And that happens in basketball. One player can do that, especially one player that good. As for Purdue, from what I understand, the message boards are turning on a particular player who didn't hit a lot of shots last night. I don't even want to say his name. If you guys know who it is, you know who it is. But they last night, I don't understand how last night, and this is the complaint people have about Painter, is that sometimes he's got a system and it works. I mean, there's no way to say that what he does doesn't work. But at the same time, when there's a change up of a certain level, sometimes they don't adjust right. And for some reason, Ohio State was able to not only keep Zach Edey from going off, but they were also able to stop Purdue from getting threes. And I don't think they should be able to do that. I don't think you should. So that's up to Purdue to figure out, well, wait a minute, you can't take away both. If you're going to take away one, we're going to adjust and get the other. But Purdue wasn't able to adjust. And I kind of thought this team was so good that you couldn't do what Ohio State did to them last night, especially Ohio State, for God's sake. So, I mean, it's concerning. Is it red alert? No, but it's concerning.
Greg, last one for me, and I guess I'll go back to that Mike Woodson front here and throw out a little hypothetical. We know Ohio State is open. Louisville, you would assume as well. If through the grapevine, Scott Dolson Company gets word that Dusty May is going to take one of those two jobs, but he would really love the Indiana job, should that spur any action here in the immediacy with Mike Woodson?
I mean, the way you're laying it out, I'll answer it because I don't think it's going to happen that way. But the way you're laying it out, boy, I can go either way. It depends on how the next couple of months go. The next month goes, okay. If IU slogs to the end, and if they go 500 the rest of the way, they can't push him out. They just can't do it. I don't care how good Dusty May you think he might be. You can't do it. And I understand in this day and age, you just can't do it. However, and I don't know this, okay. I do not know this. I do know IU has no interest in pushing out Woodson. I just know. Everybody's talking about over there. Woodson's safe, barring calamity. So I don't know what I'm about to say at all. But what I would bet a lot of money on is that Dusty May knows that Woodson. I mean, Woodson's 60, whatever he is. I mean, Woodson's going to be around probably one more year. I think that's kind of the expectation. They're going to give him 4 years, and if he doesn't turn it around, or maybe if he does start turning around, he'll be ready to go. If I had to bet, if you told me, take this guy or the house, I'd take this guy being Dusty May, and I'd take him taking this job in 14 months. Which means I don't think he would go to Ohio State. I don't think he would do anything else. I think he would. I mean, he's happy at FAU. I remember talking to him last year about FAU, and you are the flavor of the month. You realize what's coming. That was, in fact, my story. Is hired by Dusty May. He's about to be on everybody's number one list. Get to know Dusty May. By the way, he went to IU and was a manager for Bob Knight. After talking to him, he made it very, very, very clear. And you can tell when some guys are blowing smoke and some guys aren't. The fact that he's still at FAU tells me he wasn't blowing smoke. He's happy down there. He loves the weather. He's an outdoorsy guy. He rides his bike to work every day in Boca. His kids are happy. Everybody's happy. He's doing just fine, and he's young, and he knows that his best years, or his best money-making years, are down the road. He didn't tell me he'd wait for IU at all. We didn't talk about that at all. But my suspicion is, and I like my insight on this one, is that he will wait 14 months and be the next coach.
Gregg, what are you working on? I did enjoy your conversations with the IMPD chief. His name escapes me, the new guy, but Chris Bailey. Thank you. I did think that was a very nice way to localize the angle on certainly a huge national story. Anything else to keep our eyes out for this week?
Well, yeah, but can I tell you real quick about that Bailey thing? How that happened is I went to the Pacers. They had an All-Star game. The NBA and the Pacers had an All-Star game kind of media gathering, sort of to let us know what's coming. And this is maybe Tuesday of last week. And I sit down, and there's a police officer sitting down at a table by himself. It's kind of a cocktail thing, and it's awkward. And so I sat down right next to him and started talking to him, and said, "Hey, I said, so what brings you here? Are you here for security? Or are you here for whatever?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'll be making some remarks soon." I said, "Really? How come?" He goes, "Well, I'm the," or so he said something, and I said, "Well, who are you?" And he goes, "I'm the acting police chief." He hadn't been named the police chief yet, and I went, "And I'm the idiot, and I'm sorry for not knowing that." And I shook his hand. It was Chris Bailey, and I told him then the story. I said, this isn't about you. This is about me. I told him 9 years ago I got a phone call from a guy as I was driving to see my kids in Ohio, as I used to do back then when they were younger. Driving to Ohio, I got a phone call. I was at the Star for about a year, maybe 6 months, and the guy's thanking me for a story I wrote about about the religious freedom before it went nuts. And I wrote, "Can we stop yelling and just listen to everybody?" I wrote the fairest thing I've ever written about politics. Where can we just please listen to both sides? And not that there's two sides there, but just can we stop yelling? We're not going to fix this if we yell. And after the guy's thanking me, I said to him, "Listen, you told me your name, and I recognize it, but I got to tell you, I'm not sure who you are. Who are you?" And he goes, "Yeah, this is Dan Coates. I'm the senior senator from Indiana." I'm like, "Oh, my gosh, Senator Coates, I'm so sorry." So sometimes I don't really recognize who I'm talking to at times. So anyway, I met Bailey that day, and he was wonderful. And so I was able to reach out to him and get him on the phone. As far as this week, I'm going to the Caitlin Clark game at IU on Thursday night. As soon as we hang up, I'm going to write an unbudgeted, unplanned follow. I did not want to whine about the All-Star game last night and how ugly it was. I didn't think that was the setting. I didn't mind whining about Dame Lillard being a pig. Didn't mind that at all. But today, I'm going to write about the All-Star game and just what we all saw, what it means. And as usual, I'm going to go a step farther than most people are going to go, and that's okay. But in about 3 years, you'll see that I'm right.
Gregg, thank you as always. We'll hopefully run into you next week at the Combine, and looking forward to that piece and certainly your coverage coming up on Thursday down there in Bloomington.
I'll be downtown with you, KB. All right, Andy, see you guys.
See you,
Appreciate Greg.
That's the one and only Gregg Doyel, on par per usual there from him. Yeah, we're going to have, coming up Thursday, I think we're going to have Megan McEwen. She just got married. I should know her new last name. She was on the call I think she was the color analyst on the call of Iowa, Michigan last week. Obviously, I think some people here locally will remember her from Wish TV. She's not on the call for Iowa, Indiana on Thursday, but she's seen Caitlin Clark quite a lot this season. So just looking forward to that one in terms of the craze that follows Caitlin Clark around Big Ten country, because she has experienced it a whole lot this season.
I never want to be called a pig by Gregg Doyel.
Yeah, he went pig a couple times on Damian Lillard.
But it's also,
would you rather be John the Baptist?
I think I would. It's also a great thing to call somebody. It's a pig. We'll call you a pig someday. You're going to do something, I'll call you a pig. Kevin Bone, you're a pig.
Do you put as much stock into the final month of the IU season as Gregg Doyel is? That to me is a whole lot.
Yeah.
Into a time period where I'm just kind of like,
well,
who cares?
My question would be, you have.
I mean, the team gets blown out routinely. To me, that is an indicator. I mean, Tony Adragna has been all of this before. Remember the percentage of losses by at least 15? Like in game, when you are not adjusting, throwing in the towel, however you want to describe it, that to me is a pretty strong indicator of how your team's reacting to you.
You know what I find interesting? Gregg Doyel, and this I don't know, but I'm starting to feel like this is more of the norm. Gregg has said this, and he just said it there, and JMV has said this repeatedly. I'll give JMV some credit with this one. If it ultimately ends up being true, is it feels like the conversation around IU is that Mike Woodson is not going to get the IU faithful back. Okay? That there is no trust there. Maybe trust. Confidence is the better word, KB. That they feel like he's dead man walking, but that he's going to get next season by being the dead man walking. Like, there's no belief that he's ever going to get the fans back. Both of them feel that way. I mean, I don't know. If he had a winner next year, I think the fans would come back. I don't have any confidence that he's going to do that. And I'll go back to something. I was talking to some IU fans at the Woj pod that we did on Thursday night, and they actually agreed with one of my IU takes. Very rare that happens. Is, it's not just this year. It's not winning more in the tournament even last year. I could say the last 2 years, but specifically last year. And then you tie that in with this year, and you tie that in with the serious questions that you have on him building a roster. But, I mean, listen, I'm looking at Ken Pom right now, and I have to even find Indiana. They're so far down the list. I mean, Ken Pom is going to have them being an underdog in every one of these games. The only one that they would not, no, the highest clip they have to win a game per Ken Pom is 42% coming up Wednesday against Nebraska. Otherwise, they have a 37% chance per Ken Pom to beat Penn State at Penn State. 33% against Wisconsin, 25 against Maryland, 29 against Minnesota, 29 against Michigan State. They could lose all those games. They won't. I think they'll win a game in there, but, I mean, I don't know. There's 6 games left. Is 1-5 and a win over Penn State really much better than going 0-6? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, again, to me, where salt is really meeting wounds in this situation is it's never been a better time to be the head coach at Indiana in terms of quickly getting your roster, your program back on extremely fertile ground. You've got resources out the wazoo. The transfer portal can be a very, very advantageous and, again, quick way to find fixes there. You didn't walk in. It's not like, let's not act like Archie Miller had the program in Kelvin Sampson State when Tom Crean took over. And for you to have walked in and, had Trace Jackson Davis and then it to bottom out this season to where it's gotten to. I get Liam McNeely is committed. And again, we'll see what else they can find in the portal, but still, this is not the linear line at all you should be on in year 3. So as Andy just said, Nebraska coming up Wednesday inside of Assembly Hall. I believe it's an 8:30 tip. Then Purdue's got Rutgers at 7 o'clock in Mackey after the Boilers' 9-game win streak was stopped yesterday in Columbus.
Can I just throw this out there? I mean, you mentioned McNeely. There's also nobody else in that class right now.
Oh, yeah, it's got to be heavy portal.
I mean, it's going to,
yeah. And we'll see about Derek Queen, the big kid I know they've been rumored with for quite a while. We'll see if he is a late commit to that. But, again, we're talking about bigs. It's like, well, that hasn't really been the issue. It's going to have to be a portal. It's got to be Christmas Day, portal-wise, filled with guards for you to feel much better about
IU is in a terrible spot. IU is in a terrible spot, and they put themselves in this spot, and Mike Woodson, having the type of team that he has this year, put him in this spot, but you're not just getting rid of, just anyone. You're getting rid of, Mike Woodson. It's not just, hey, it's easy, Chris Holtmann at Ohio State, hey, it's time to move on. You've had, 6-7 years here at the helm in Columbus. It's easier to move on from that, and then you got to bring up financially. How long do they want to keep going to people to bail them out of having bad hires? I mean, it's just, the Mike Woodson, he's 65, so it's like, okay, he's not going to be here for 6-7 more years. Well, then we need to make the next 2 or 3 really valuable, and they're not being valuable. It's just a mess.
That's why I brought up the Dusty May hypothetical to Gregg Doyel. You know that you did not hire Mike Woodson thinking 10, 15 years you're going to build a statue out front with him. That was not the thinking. It was, maybe it's going to be whatever, a 6-year run, something along those lines. And so now the question is, you're halfway through those 6 years, and I don't know if Dusty May has earned this right, to be fair. There'll probably be some out there that would say he's not. But has Dusty May earned the right to where all of a sudden if you hear Ohio State, if you hear Louisville, and when you're Scott Dolson, you can't be naive to realize those are 2 of your biggest recruiting sort of competitors in your own backyard moving forward. If you really covet him like that, and he's telling you through the grapevine, hey, I want your job, but I also can't bypass those jobs if you're not going to make a move.
It's a terrible spot. Yeah, I know.
That, to me, I think is just a conversation that you have to have. And it's awkward as hell, and it might not offer a clear answer, but to me, you can't just all of a sudden close your ears and lock your door and act like that's not a conversation that needs to be had.
If Dusty May is in a situation and there is a avenue of communication where you think he will wait 14 months, fine. Although that would seem like hell if I'm an IU fan. And by the way, who knows what happens the rest of this year and next year with Dusty May? You know, Dusty May is in a situation to where he needs to strike here at some point, right? He needs to strike and get that job where he's making 3.5, 4.2 mil.
And again, I don't know if Dusty May has earned that right, to be honest with you.
With Indiana fans, he has. I'm with you. I think there are some questions you could have, and it's not hot takes.
I mean, Archie Miller made an Elite Eight run at Dayton. Like
I wrote down, how's he different than Archie Miller? How you talked about him?
I think that is a conversation that you would have. So certainly a lot of stuff for the offseason on that end. Unfortunately, hoops-wise, it was ugly around the state of Indiana this weekend. Let's begin with a little college hoop talk here for the morning checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
Yeah, let's get to some player sound here, some stuff we haven't heard today. Purdue, let's start with MKB, 73-69 losers there. They're at Ohio State. Braden Smith, 12 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds in the loss. And post-game, Smith, we just need to move on.
Just move on to the next one. I mean, it's a game. We still got our goals ahead of us. It doesn't change a thing. Just keep playing our basketball and regroup.
Again, the things with Purdue, if you look at the 3 losses this year, the turnover number been very high in each of those 3. That's probably been the one constant in those games. And we've seen it now a couple of times here as of late. Zach Edey foul trouble. It's not like decimating foul trouble, but it's showing up, and what it's doing is obviously taking him off the floor for a period of time, and Purdue hasn't handled it as well as maybe they were doing to other parts of the season. Andy, I feel like you could probably survive an Edey foul trouble stretch at some point in the tournament. Multiple games of it, though, you're playing with fire. They survived it Thursday night at home against Minnesota. They didn't survive it yesterday in the first half. I thought that was when Ohio State really kind of seized control. And it was one of those moments where Ohio State needed something to kind of grab onto, be like, oh, wait, we can win this game. I thought when Edey went to the bench, Purdue looked really sloppy. That was in Ohio State. Got that feeling, and Jamison Battle was outstanding in the second half.
Yeah, one more thing on this game we haven't talked too much about. This reminds me of the Pacers. I can't remember which game it was, but as the Pacers about a week ago, we had this conversation that as bad as they played, it was a Charlotte game. Remember, as bad as they played, there's a couple minutes left. It's like a tie game, right? So, you could erase everything and say, okay, we played like crap, but the final 2 or 3 minutes, we made those winning plays. And like the day or two after, Carlisle came on with us and, talked about the killer instinct and those sorts of things. There was a little bit of that with Purdue. They're down 5 with about 3.5, and then they come back, right? And you're thinking, okay, they're going to escape. And even the crowd there in Columbus kind of felt it. It's like, are they going to actually escape? Now, Ohio State did enough, but what bothered me as well, I'm sure Purdue fans have been thinking, why are these guys talking about this? There was 30 seconds to go, and Ethan Morton commits a foul. He committed the foul on, and I'm blanking on the guy's name. Who's the lefty? He's a Battle.
Yeah.
He committed a foul there, and that was going to be an off-balance 16, 17-footer.
Well, Battle had hit some big shots in the second half.
He had balled out, but you fouled there, and it went from, hey, if you get a stop here, you can go down, tie, or even win the game in the final seconds. But I know as we talk about Purdue getting ready for the tournament, again, there's 30 seconds to go, and your best defender is fouling on a shot he didn't have to foul on.
Well, and you go back, honestly, to when Indiana played at Ohio State. Remember, Battle had gotten to the foul line, I think, late in that game. Then Mike Woodson made a switch there and got the stop on him on that next possession. Purdue could not get those stops on Battle there as they tried to complete their comeback. So Rutgers coming up on Thursday. Again, Indiana loses Northwestern yesterday. That is now 8 of 12 losses for the Hoosiers. They have yet to beat Northwestern in the Mike Woodson era. Golden opportunity early in that game. Boo Buie gets 2 fouls, sits for half of the first half. They don't have Ty Berry, one of their other double-digit guards. Indiana could not take advantage in a very underwhelming, non-5-star NIL-laden front court of Northwestern. Double-doubles for both Matthew Nicholson and the Martinelli kid. They were able to control some things there. So Indiana loses at home to the Wildcats.
Daytona 500 today. You gonna watch it all? 4
Postponed
o'clock?
again, right?
Yes. It's postponed again from today even?
No. I
Oh,
meant
to today,
two. Yeah.
And how about your boy Tiger? Shockingly, he had to pull
So
out
I
of another
can't follow
tournament.
this here. Okay, so Tiger won the U.S. Open on a broken leg, but can't have a few Tums in his golf bag. Do we blame the new caddy for not having the Tums ready?
Wasn't everyone blaming In-N-Out Burger all weekend?
It did seem like illness was going around.
Yeah.
Is that really why you have to
PGA Tour
withdraw,
event.
though? You can't be like, I got to go to the clubhouse or where's a porta potty?
if it's
Give
that
me
bad.
10 minutes.
I mean, we all have been there to some degree,
Where's the
but
porta
again,
potty?
the guy won the U.S. Open on a broken leg. I mean, come on now. Could we get the man a little Pepto-Bismol here on the 7th tee at Riviera? I was frightened when I saw him in a golf cart. Very happy to see it was just illness for Tiger. Again, Butler, Indiana State, both losing important games for their respective NCAA tournament resumes at this point for the Sycamores. It is going to come down to Arch Madness. For Butler, a big one tomorrow at Villanova as they try to get another win away from home to improve their resume. And All-Star Sunday night. If you missed it, the East scored 211 points last night, 211 to 186. Damian Lillard, who chucked it at honestly, everyone chucked it, to be honest with you, last night, but Lillard probably chucked it the most. He is your MVP, beating Tyrese Halliburton in that voting competition 7-5. I will continue to say what I will remember the most about All-Star Sunday night was Halliburton's flurry to start the game. 5 straight threes. And the 6th one he pulled up from Kokomo.
I was hoping that was going to go in, too. I really was. Come on.
That was absolutely electric. All right, it's time for the pop quiz. 317-239-1070.
Some people just know the best.
big? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with KB and Andy. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
All right, Kevin Bowen, have you looked at the Pop Quiz yet? It looks doable to me.
I have not, but I'm pulling it up right now.
No Olympics, no hockey.
Oh, wow, yeah, I'm seeing the answers.
So,
Yeah,
those are some names you've heard of.
Certainly if you paid attention last night, which, again, I do not fault anyone that tuned that off pretty quickly.
I don't know. What if I pivoted? What if I came in here today and was like, I see nothing wrong with the All-Star game. Give me 211 to 200 or 186 or whatever it was. What if I totally went against everyone and thought, that's a beautiful game. We got to see dunks and threes. Come on. What else do you want?
I would strongly disagree.
You'd call me
like
a
Karl Anthony Towns scoring 50 points last night. I mean, I watched the whole game, and I'm like, wait, he had 50?
You know what his nickname is? The Big Purr. Do you like that?
Oh.
Do you
I
like
thought you were
that,
going to go
Carl?
with the big pig after Greg Doyel, who we had on earlier, was calling Damian Lillard that.
He wasn't being a pig. Lillard was the one being a pig.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Lillard
wasn't
was.
Karl Anthony
I mean,
Towns.
Lillard pretty much said it postgame. I wanted to be the MVP. I was gunning.
What's funny is all the guys that I thought were going to maybe be MVP, like I was like, what about Maxey? He's a young guy. They'll play him a lot. Maxey had 10 points. Or I thought the same about Donovan Mitchell. You know, he'll go out there and gun a bunch. He had 9 points. And then the other ones that I thought would be Steph Curry and Luka. And Luka had 7 points and looked like he couldn't jump over a phone book.
Before we get to the pop quiz, 2 changes. Elam ending, back in the game, and give me USA versus World.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Like,
especially the
all
Elam
this was
ending.
built up about East versus West. I'm like, what?
Nobody cares,
no.
right.
Like, if anything, the East guys are going to hate each other more because they see each other more during the year. Or, there's not going to be this, like, let's band together because we're in the same conference.
Because we're in the Eastern
here.
Conference, right.
To me, USA World, you'd get a little bit more of that. And I don't think it'd be just like an Olympic thing. Because, again, the world team is going to look, the world roster would look, I'm just doing this out loud. Gilgeous Alexander.
Yep.
Joker.
Yep.
I guess, technically
Luka.
Embiid should be. He's born in Cameroon. Obviously, Giannis. Right there, boom.
Yeah. Listen, I'm good with it. I got no problem. You're preaching to the choir with me.
Half the starters were international guys last
I got
time?
no problem with it.
All right, it's time for the pop quiz. 317-239-1070. Jiffy Lube oil change. Andy Sweeney, give us a number 1 through 8.
Let's go with number 5 if we can today. Caller number 5. Who do we have?
Steve.
Steve, good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Andy. And in a turnabout, first of all, happy President's Day.
You as well.
And, in a turnabout here, who is the only president to have played Division I athletics?
Didn't Ford play at Michigan?
You are correct, because you paid attention to Jake's most favorite show of the year, President's Day.
Well, I can't say I did that, but no, I just remember studying presidents back in the day. Steve, how you been, man?
I'm doing great.
Steve, you got a favorite president now that we're on the topic?
It was the president I talked about earlier, Gerald Ford.
Okay. Offensive line, is that correct for him? Center?
Center.
Okay.
Center.
And was good, right? Like, wasn't just a nobody.
Correct.
Interesting here.
You know what's funny? Steve mentions Jake Query's favorite show, the President's Day show.
Brace yourself from noon to 3 today.
That's it. KB for Scotty. I wish you could have seen it. Mark, you as well. For a split second, I saw Bowen's face of kind of, thank God I don't have to go through that today. Or like, I've been through that a couple times. I don't need to go through it today.
Weathered the storm.
Yeah, I would say that is an accurate statement. Steve, thank you for calling in. Andy Sweeney, toss number 1 as well.
All right, Steve, let's get a winner here on a Monday. The East beat the West 211-186 in last night's NBA All-Star game at the Fieldhouse. Who was the leading scorer in the game? Come on. Lillard, Halliburton, Karl Anthony Towns, Jaylen Brown.
Carl, the Towns guy.
Yes.
50 points.
The Big Purr.
Steve, number 2 here. This guy's such a smooth player. Name the player who holds the record for the most points in an NBA All-Star game. Anthony Davis, Jason Tatum, Wilt, or Steph Curry?
Steph Curry.
Question number 3. Who scored the 200th point for the East last night? Was it Lillard, Halliburton, Jaylen Brown, or Giannis?
Jaylen Brown.
I swear Halliburton scored all his points at the start and the end. When
really
he got
did.
in the second quarter, all he did was pass.
Yeah,
I'm like, come
you're
on,
right.
man. But he did have a nice behind the back to Giannis. Okay, number 4 here. You say Jaylen Brown? Okay. 4, second-ranked Purdue lost at Ohio State yesterday. The Buckeyes were playing their first game under interim head coach Jake Diebler after firing Chris Holtman last week. Where did Diebler play college basketball? They mentioned this several times on the telecast. Did he play at Ohio State, Butler, Indiana State, or Valpo?
I didn't watch the game because I was stuck in traffic on West Street trying to get downtown yesterday, but he played at Valpo.
All right, that's good. Question number 5. Rain is supposed to move out of Daytona now this morning. I guess, Scotty, that's happened. Yesterday, everything was canceled. Since moving to the current track in 1959, there have only been 5 Daytona 500s that did not go the full 200-lap distance. Who was the last driver to win a rain-shortened Daytona 500? Was it Matt Kenseth, Jimmy Johnson, Jamie McMurray, Michael Waltrip?
Jamie McMurray.
Steve, you're always so decisive. I respect that about you. Are you usually a gut instinct human?
Don't ask my wife.
Well, touche there. Okay, the ones he got right, Anthony Towns did have 50.
That is correct.
And Valpo, he was all over Jake Diebler.
Correcto.
Yeah,
but the most points in All-Star game history, I think Jason Tatum is so smooth.
Oh, he's a beast.
55 for him last year. 200th point. Were you awake for that?
No.
Did you bail at that point?
I'd already bailed at that point, but I did see it this morning. That
I don't blame you. Matt Kenseth, by the way, not Jamie McMurray on that end. Steve, thank you for the call. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in so far. We'll do it one final time here.
Back in my
The Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, final few minutes here on the show. You miss any of it, check it out, 1075thefan.com for all the podcast stuff. A lot of NBA All-Star festivity items, Purdue losers, Indiana as well. You can find it all there at 1075thefan.com. Query and Company coming your way at noon, JMV at 3 o'clock. Are you guys ready to do GOATs of the weekend?
Let's do it.
Who is the GOAT?
I told you all that I was the greatest of all time.
Jordan, here's Michael at the foul line. A shot on Elo. Good! That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Or GOAT?
This guy sucks.
Of the week.
All right, the good, the bad, your GOATs of the weekend. KB, do you want to fire away? You want to start on the good side?
Sure.
I'm
going to give a shout out to one of the stars of the NBA individually. I brought this up at some point during the show, but Steph Curry did a little contest last night where $1,000 he'd send to the IPS middle school basketball programs for every point he scored. Media Rule 101, I was openly cheering for more Steph Curry points last night. Would have nice if Karl Anthony Towns would have known that and maybe passed Steph the ball a little bit more. 16 points for Steph, so 16,000 being sent again to the IPS middle school basketball programs. Love that from him. You know, I don't know. He's got zero ties whatsoever to this city. For him to come into our market for All-Star Weekend and do something like that, pretty cool. So, community service, a little philanthropic side of Steph Curry. Thank you for that, Steph.
Well, I know now we can't top that mark. He went to the charitable function of Steph Curry. I was going to bring up my go to the week was Rick Pitino.
Rick Pitino press conferences.
Was Rick Pitino throwing his team under the bus and everyone being, how could you ever play for Pitino? I've covered like 150 Pitino press conferences. He's done this to every team his entire life, multiple times every year. He tells you how much his team stinks it up, but they actually may stink it up this year.
My go to the week, I think it's pretty easy. Tyrese Halliburton. The guy was everywhere. He was doing a million things, getting pulled in 9,000 different directions from podcasts to the crossover meet and greet, which I saw him at. He was all around town, plus his duties Saturday and Sunday night. He has been a great advocate for the city. He did a tremendous job. Now rest today. Take a nap, relax, get a massage, do something.
Party Sunday.
But well done, Tyrese.
The Sunday scaries for Tyrese Halliburton.
You did the city of Indianapolis very proud.
No better ambassador.
I thought Matherin had a good weekend too.
And Turner as well. I mean, I think all the Pacers.
Agreed.
It was a lot that they had to do from a public appearance standpoint. I guess I'll go there for my worst go to the week. Andy, you and I were in the thick of it on Saturday at the Indiana crossover or at the NBA crossover. I can't stand the autograph hoarders. I mean, they're just...
You mean the old guy, right?
I mean, they've got bags of stuff like none other. I mean, they're trying to run down Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol's got a ton of security around him.
He had 12 police officers around him.
And these people are sprinting through the convention center.
Pau Gasol, he's a Hall of Famer.
I'm like, I'm biased. I got the little nephew there. I'm just like, can we just let Benedict Matherin sign his autographs to the little kids and move on? But no. Ben, don't put anyone's name on there because this is going straight online. No, don't say to Teddy here. I need this to be sold. So the autograph hoarders.
Don't say it's to Teddy. I love that. My one's going to be Wisconsin basketball. They lost to Iowa. They've lost 5
Tony
out of 6.
Perkins, LN product for the game winner.
They've lost 5 out of 6, and still the committee had them as the 16th best team in the country over the weekend. Like, okay, they've lost 5 out of 6.
Mark?
MLB free agency. There's too many big name guys still out there, and spring training's underway. That stinks. It's dumb.
God, it is spring training, isn't it?
That's a good point.
Thank you to Gregg Doyel. Thank you to Tony East. Tomorrow, franchise tag window is open. We'll chat about that. Rick Carlisle should be joining us as well. Everybody have a great President's Day.
It was not the season we expected.